This podcast contains detailed plot spoilers, adult language, and mature themes. Listener discretion is advised. We are gathered here today to pay our respects to a fallen hero. He was always thinking of others, doing the right thing to help, looking for good in people, and he would always fight the good fight for peace and justice in the galaxy. Alas, he is no longer with us, but we will always remember his spirit, his courage, and his leadership, as his light will always burn bright for others to be inspired by for generations to come. Admiral Akbar, we salute you, and may the Force be with you. Welcome to a podcast of rare antiquities. Today we will discuss and analyze what most nerds have been waiting 2 years for. Rian Johnson's Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. Once again, this is Harry, and I'll be your Resistance General for today's show.
And I'll be your Praetorian Guard, Geoff.
And I'm going to be that random porg that just makes noises.
And I'm the cooked porg.
Cooked porg. Okay. Okay, you got a couple of you guys. All right, that's awesome. Okay.
I only know one truth. It's time for the Jedi to end.
Welcome back, gentlemen. Well, it came, and it's conquering the box office as we speak, and it definitely kicked our asses. Let's get this started. Let's just do a quick Jedi Knight roundtable here regarding the lead up to the movie and how spoiled each of you were. Geoff, please start us off with some quick thoughts.
Yeah, I was 100% spoiler free. I did not know anything going in. I saw only the 2 official trailers. I didn't see any of the behind the scenes things, maybe a couple of the TV spots. And that was it. I was pretty excited for this one. Over the last couple years, I was a big fan of The Force Awakens, and I was really excited to see what came next. And yeah, I was pretty jazzed, man. It felt like a fast 2 years and a long 2 years at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, how about yourself?
Surprisingly, I stayed away from spoilers after 4 previous movies of trying to find everything I could possibly find about the movie. I decided to take a different approach, just given the fact that it just felt different based upon the lead up and also the trailers. And so going into it, it's like I just watched the trailers and that was it. Like I nearly read a review and nearly watched a review and then kind of screamed at myself and turned it off immediately because I wanted to go in without knowing anything. And it certainly helped with this particular movie. But no, it's definitely been super pumped about it. Got seats for Thursday, and it was a fun night.
It's good. How about yourself, Nathan?
Very spoiler-free. Like Geoff, I only watched the first 2 trailers, but then after that, I didn't watch any TV spots or read anything about it, which was tough because there's one show on YouTube that I like to watch, and all they do is talk about Star Wars, so I would always have to kind of like jump around when they would start talking about the spin-off movies, video games, books, and stuff like that. And they might drop the odd nugget here and there, but then out of context, I would never really remember what they're talking about. So I think this is the most spoiler-free I've ever gone into a movie that I'm been excited to see.
Yeah, I like you guys. Same thing. Pretty spoiler-free. I only watched the first 2 trailers. I avoided each and every single TV spot, which was a first. And that was very hard to do because I think they unloaded about 30 of them out there from what people are saying. Any other thoughts before we begin? Or should I just jump right into a plot synopsis?
Let's jump in, man.
Okay, let's just jump in. So just bear with me. This may take a few minutes, but I think it'll be worth it to refresh your guys' memories. So there we go. Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi. As we pick up immediately after the events of Episode 7, The Force Awakens, the Resistance is counterattacked as the First Order strikes back. The best star pilot in the galaxy, Poe Dameron, is able to single-handedly stall the attack on the Resistance base by putting General Hux on a conference call hold so long it would make 1 million call center servers in India overload. Stall tactic works, and the Resistance is able to launch a bomber attack on the First Order's lead Dreadnought-class warship, destroying it in the process. But many Resistance bombers died to bring us that information. The remaining Resistance ship escapes, but General Hux has a trick up his ginger sleeve. Meanwhile, on the planet Acto, Luke Skywalker has been found by Rey. As she hands the Excalibur F Skywalker lightsaber back to its former master, he tosses it in disgust and walks away. Does he have to go to the bathroom? Is he old and confused? Or does he need to find some solitary Jedi release, as this is the first woman he's seen since he hugged his sister many Endor moons ago? Nope. Luke doesn't want anything to do with her, despite pleas from her, or even Chewie, who now informs him that Han Solo is dead. There is no Snoke monster on this island, so Rey stays and observes Luke over a few days. And it seems Luke is now more interested in the intergalactic sport of pole vault fishing, and also seems to have an intimate relationship with Dr. Zoidberg's mother. Ah, if only Biggs could see him now. Good news, everyone! The Resistance got away from the First Order. As they jump out of hyperspace, we find Finn awake and walking around in a back-to-suit with more holes in the plot of Star Trek Into Darkness. The Resistance suddenly realizes the First Order has tracked them to this system. Through hyperspace? That's impossible. And before Admiral Akbar could say you can't repel a coincidence of that magnitude, he, Leia, and several other Resistance bridge officers get sucked out into space as the First Order bombs their Star Cruiser. Everyone is dead. But oh wait, Leia wakes up, and despite being exposed to the vacuum of space of what seems like several minutes, she uses the Force and Mary Poppins it back to the Star Cruiser. She is alive, but is in some kind of midichlorian coma. With all the senior officers dead and General Leia in a coma, the Resistance names Admiral Amulin Holdo as acting leader of the Resistance. But as Poe alerts everyone, they are running out of fuel and cannot keep making more hyperspace jumps as the First Order will keep tracking them. But hold on, we have an insider. Finn, you know that guy who cleaned toilets on Starkiller Base? His uncanny scientific knowledge of how Supreme Leader Snoke's ship works would make even Mr. Scott blush, and open up his vintage bottle of Aldebaran whiskey to share it with him. Anyways, Finn and some other maintenance worker named Rose figure out how to stop the First Order from tracking their ship, but they need to get into Snoke's ship, which would require someone to help break them in. A master code hacker. Someone has to find him on a casino planet and convince him to join the Resistance. And then you gotta bring him to Snoke's ship and get him to... Yeah, this sounds a little convoluted. Couldn't they fly casual or something? The Resistance sends Finn and Rose to Canto Blight to save their bacon. You know, because all the other more qualified officers, pilots, and soldiers, they've got nothing better to do except stay behind and continually get shot to pieces. Back on the island, Luke is once again aroused by young Leia's Episode 4 hologram and agrees to provide Rey 3 lessons only, just to prove it's time for the Jedi to end. Instead of having her wax his X-Wing, paint his HUD, or sand his floors, he sits Rey on a rock and proceeds to tickle and slap her until she gets in touch with her feelings. Luke's first lesson is that because the Force is interconnected to all living aspects of life on the planet, the Jedi have no reason to control it. To do so would be illogical and hypocritical. Lesson 1 is over. At Canto Blight, Finn and Rose manage to track down James Sleaze Bondo, the master hacker. But oh wait, they forgot to pay for parking and get tossed into prison. There they meet DJ, another master code hacker. Give me the code, you fucking cocksucker motherfucker, what a fa. While DJ continues to spin his abilities to Finn and Rose, he breaks them out of prison. Soon Finn and Rose find themselves in the barn of some Harry Potter-esque racehorses that look like Siamese cats. Finn and Rose break these horses out of their animal prisons because, you know, animal rights, bitch, and find themselves in a chase which sends a message to the upper class. You show 'em, Finn. DJ shows up with BB-8 and they all leave the system on their way back to Snoke's ship to disable that tracking. Back on the island, Rey is having some dark thoughts and seems to be connected by the Force to Kylo Ren. They can see and talk to each other, even though they're in different areas of the galaxy. Rey pushes Kylo away. Luke continues the next day with his second lesson, a tale of how the Jedi always fail. From his point of view, both the Sith and the Jedi are evil, just like his father before him. Luke explains to Rey that despite having thousands of Jedi at their peak, Darth Sidious fooled them all, and the great Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi failed at training Anakin Skywalker. Yeah, seems that even though the Jedi helped keep the peace for 1,000 years, those 30 years of tyranny due to stupidity trump all the good that happened before. Then Ben Solo had some dark thoughts, just like Vader did, and suddenly turned on Luke. Burned down the academy, slaughtered the other students, and left Luke for dead. Millennials, what are you gonna do? Lesson 2 is over. Confused, Rey lets herself get caught up in visiting a dark side cave and asks the cave about her parents, only to see herself alone in a mirrored reflection. Message, Rey? None that I can think of, except, of course, Happy Rey Day. Surely the best of times. Another after-hours private discussion with Kylo Ren has Rey sympathizing with the former Skywalker apprentice. Kylo, like his grandfather before him, now informs Rey that Luke, from his point of view, is actually evil, as Luke attempted to murder him. I guess that's a good enough reason to mass murder everyone else. Again, just like his grandfather before him. Upset, Rey beats Luke Skywalker in a stick fight and gives him one final chance to make things right, to take the Skywalker saber and go redeem Ben Solo. Luke's response, well, I never really intended to kill Ben, so now I'm too old for this shit. Distraught, Rey, Chewie, and R2-D2 leave Luke to continue to sulk on the island as Rey intends on redeeming Ben herself. Where is Guinan when you need her? Luke, still reeling that the Jedi should end, attempts to burn down a Force tree that holds some ancient Jedi textbooks, but is interrupted by Force Ghost Yoda. Who da man? Yoda Man! Yoda blows up the tree himself as he brings the thunder and lightning and proceeds to mock Luke in the process, just like old times. Oh, young Skywalker, didn't you learn these lessons already? You learn from failure, not this crude matter, referring to the textbooks. Now get up, you son of a bitch, because Yoda loves you. Luke is gonna fly now. Back at the Resistance cruiser in what will eventually end up being the slowest space chase ever witnessed in the history of anything, the First Order continues to follow and shoot at the remaining Resistance ships. Poe attempts to give Vice Admiral Holdo a Vulcan hello when he is stun-gunned by General Leia, now awake. Despite the First Order being practically in visual range of the remaining Resistance vessels, Leia and Holdo devise a plan to send transports holding all remaining Resistance fighters to the mineral planet of Crate, hoping that the First Order won't notice. Poe goes to the window. Finn, old buddy, don't let me down. On Snoke's ship, DJ helps Finn and Rose infiltrate the ship without notice, because, he's a master code hacker. They are captured. Simultaneously, Rey surrenders herself to Kylo Ren and then she is taken before Snoke, Mr. California Raisin himself. Snoke tortures Rey for a bit and then tells his apprentice Kylo Ren to finish the job. Snoke doesn't seem to have great peripheral vision, as Kylo finishes what Vader had started and kills his own dark side master, taking his place. Good morning, Mr. Anderson. Rey and Kylo then proceed to wipe out all of Snoke's guards with such acrobatic proficiency that it would make Agent Smith himself break a sweat. After the guards are wiped out, Kylo Ren then declares himself the Renperor, and then asks Rey to play Wheel of Fish. What's in the box? Nothing. Kylo informs Rey she came from intergalactic rednecks who sold their daughter for drinking money. Rey accepts the truth of her parents, but refuses to join Kylo on the dark side, and they decide to have a game of tug-and-war with Skywalker saber, destroying it in the process. They are both tossed back, seemingly unconscious. In parallel, DJ betrays both Finn and Rose along with the Resistance. Lesson learned, Finn. Don't get caught up in warfare. Evil is everywhere. With Finn and Rose about to be executed, they're spared due to the heroics of Vice Admiral Holdo as she rams the Resistance cruiser into Snoke's ship at light speed, tearing it in half. Now that created a lot of sparks that will eventually bring the First Order down. Finn and Rose then get help from BB-8 and escape the ship. Oh yeah, Captain Phasma died again. Third time's a charm in Episode 9, maybe? On the planet Crate, the Resistance is held up in a mine that is barricaded by a blast shield that only a Death Star-like weapon could blast through, so we are safe. I don't know. First Order has a portable mini Death Star ray cannon. There are just some things you cannot escape from in a galaxy far, far away. The Resistance and Finn do their best to launch an attack on the Death Star cannon. Now this is pod racing. Finn decides to sacrifice himself to take out the cannon, but is saved by Rose. Rose tells Finn, love will conquer all, another spark that will burn the First Order to the ground. Kylo Ren and his mini Death Star continue to advance towards the Rebel base and puncture a hole in the blast shield. But oh wait, Luke Skywalker shows up out of nowhere. Kylo wants vengeance and focuses all the attack onto Luke as Luke is bombarded by all kinds of firepower. Poe realizes that Luke is there to provide a distraction so the new sparks of heroes can escape to fight another day. After realizing that all the weapons on Luke did not work, Kylo Ren faces him, Master versus Apprentice. Luke dodges a couple of Kylo Ren strikes, but just stands there. Kylo then stabs Luke with his lightsaber, but nothing happens. Luke stares blankly at his nephew. See you around, kid, and Luke vanishes. Kylo Ren then realizes that Luke was never there, and we cut to see Luke still sitting on Acto, as this was all some kind of Force projection trick. We see Luke then collapse on Acto, exhausted from using the Force. Luke's distraction lets the Resistance fighters escape the cave as Rey lifts a bunch of boulders so they can escape from the back door. Despite their numbers significantly reduced, the Resistance lives to fight another day as they escape on the Millennium Falcon. Back on Acto, Luke struggles to sit up on his meditation rock. He is tired, as it seems he forgot to charge his midichlorian batteries. Upon staring out into the horizon, he sees his life come full circle as he stares out at another binary sunset. So it's time for his life to end. Luke disappears as he becomes one with the Force. Back on Canto Blight, a young stable boy who was inspired by Rose and Finn, as well as the tall tales about Luke Skywalker, has him look up to the stars, dreaming of adventures and excitement. He sees a shooting star, perhaps the essence of what remains of Luke Skywalker, as Luke may now live as some kind of celestial astronaut on some kind of Star Trek. The end.
Good job on the synopsis, man. I think that was your finest effort to date on the show. Lots of deep cuts there. I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah, besides the fact that I thought Star Trek Into Darkness was a really good Star Trek movie, I thought everything else was really good.
Seems we've lost Andrew, I think. Did somebody hang up on him? I just heard static.
All right, so guys, we're not going to do a scene-by-scene breakdown. The kind of the format I was thinking of is let's just talk about the big overall storylines. We'll separate them out. Even though they were broken up in the movie, we'll just combine them and have a chat about each and every one in one pass. And then afterwards, we'll go through some character arcs, and then we can maybe have the discussion open after that and talk about some themes. And then we can open the floor to anyone who wants to ask any questions or if we missed anything. And then we can close it out by talking about some auxiliary stuff like the direction, the writing, the score, and so forth. So let's get right into this here. So the storylines, let's just break it down this way. I'll just tell you the storylines first, how we'll break it out. The opening act with the First Order attacking the Resistance, because I thought we'd break that out separately because it's a action-packed beginning. Then we'll talk about Finn, Rose, and the DJ storyline and everything that happens on Canto Blight. Then we'll talk about Luke, Rey, and all that connection with Kylo Ren on the island. Then the Resistance storyline with Leia, Poe, and Vice Admiral Holdo. Then Snoke's throne room scenes with Kylo Ren and Rey. And then we can have a little quick chat about Finn and Rose's escape off Snoke's ship. And then the Battle of Creighton in the end. So let's start it off, the first one here. The opening act with the First Order attacking the Resistance. Geoff, how about you start us off here? What were your thoughts?
Well, the first thing that did strike me was this really did pick up right where The Force Awakens left off, and that's a new thing for Star Wars. Usually there has been a time gap of some kind between our episodes. It's usually a couple years, right, between episodes, and this is continuing almost at the, in the very moments after The Force Awakens. So that's interesting, and that kind of enables a very quick beginning. I thought the Starfighter, like the battle above, I don't remember the name of the planet that the old Resistance base was on, but with the bombers to destroy the Dreadnought First Order ship there was really strong. Action scenes going on there. I thought it was good. The humor there with Poe calling General Hux. I mean, it was funny. It seemed a little out of place in Star Wars, but I did get a laugh. But a strong opening overall. Like, that's kind of what struck me there. The character who perished, who was Rose's sister. That was a good scene there with her sacrificing herself there. Like, she's got to drop all the bombs, but, she knows that she's dead when she does it. She goes ahead and does it there. So it was dark, but it worked well. I thought that was good. So good, strong opening.
Andrew, how about yourself?
I think Geoff summed it up pretty well. I really liked the opening, the bomb sequence as well, like minus, gravity and space. I thought it was executed very well. And it was fun seeing like different types of bombers. Just the sequence, you get a good sense of the implications of the scene in terms of like the Resistance trying to escape. And there were some comical moments that were a little different. I think it set the tone also as well for like how funny this movie would be at times, which was surprising, but a nice surprise. But overall, it was like also a good start to just how beautifully shot this movie would end up being.
Nathan?
The fact that we have no time jump, I thought was an interesting choice because that would, have given, Rian Johnson like a little bit more leeway, you'd think, in creating this universe. He's like, no, I don't care about that. Yeah, it's a strong action sequence. The humor, the call to Hux, I won't deny that I laughed. And, maybe in some way it's sort of consistent with Poe because, if you remember from Force Awakens, there's a little bit of a jokey moment when he meets Kylo Ren there at the beginning of the movie. And I remember that humor struck me as a little bit out of place. But I'm thinking now that, well, maybe it's just a little bit more in line with his character so I can accept it. And the fact that we kind of start off with somewhat of a failure on the Resistance's part. They did destroy the Dreadnought eventually, but at a huge loss. And I think that sets the tone for the rest of this movie. I'm talking more about the themes, obviously, but like just failures and stuff, which I think people were sort of expecting, this movie to be dark. The comparisons to Empire are going to be there. Rian Johnson and just Disney in general just knew they couldn't escape that. So, I like that. Okay, we're just going to start dark. But like overall, like a pretty strong Star Wars action sequence, I felt.
I was a bit uninspired personally with this battle. I just felt it took a little too long, and because we really weren't focusing on a lot of our main characters in this scene. I really didn't have a lot of interest here. I know what they were trying to do is set up Rose and her feelings of loss with her sister, and that's going to, propel her into her story. It just kind of just felt a little something that could have been cut down or cut out completely. The humor, I liked a tiny bit of it. I was more leaning towards the stuff that was happening with BB-8 and him fixing the ship, the X-Wing, I think that worked for me more. The conference call hold was a bit out of place for me. In the first viewing, I remember people laughing quite a bit when I watched it with you, Geoff and Nathan, but on the second viewing, it was just dead silence in the theater. So that's kind of how I
Really?
felt. Yeah. For all
that is surprising, actually.
Yeah, I mean, the BB-8 stuff, everyone was laughing at. But the conference call hold, nobody was laughing at. It just fell flat. That's kind of how I felt. I didn't get a chuckle out of it. It just felt a little out of place. And then during the battle, it kind of just painted the First Order as a bit incompetent. Like they were trying to just shoot the one, it's just a small scene, but it just didn't have that weight that you had if we want to just compare to the Empire, whether it's Empire Strikes Back or A New Hope, especially those two movies. There's a bit more weight and sense of dread and power from the Empire. Here it just felt like everything was made for a gag from the First Order, and they just couldn't really do anything, and that just kind of left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth. But that's just me. So let's now have a chat with the storyline of Finn meeting Rose, their plans about the tracking, them meeting DJ, all of the Canto Blight stuff. We can include the brief scenes here with Maz Kanata informing them where to go and how to help and all that stuff. Everything on the Resistance Cruiser and Canto Blight.
Oh boy, I don't even know. I mean, I honestly feel like this is the weakest part of the movie for me, and none of it hit. In a way, I kind of forgot about much of this. I kind of like this new character, Rose, I guess, although there were parts of the relationship with her and Finn that didn't really work, and that's sort of maybe an overall thing. And then there's some kind of weird humor again here that actually didn't really work for me when she thought that he was, trying to abandon ship, and everything on Canto Bight. It was everything that I dislike about the prequels. It's weird and goofy. And I remember it was actually one of the few things that I had only briefly heard about. There was going to be this casino world. Thought, oh, okay, this is going to be awesome because this is going to be like this trilogy's cantina or something like that, like this weird alien casino. And then it looked more like the Star Wars Vegas experience or something like that. It feels so out of place and so not Rian Johnson to me for some reason that I can't really put my finger on. It's also part of the movie where I usually don't like to harp on like effects not working well, but I mean, this movie does a really good job with practical effects, and then we suddenly get a lot of computer generated effects. And again, a lot of the humor that was in here just didn't really work for me. I liked the introduction of DJ and having Del Toro come in. I wish we had more of him, but alas, we kind of don't. Benicio Del Toro is just a very strange guy in general, so I liked seeing him in this movie. But it honestly, everything just fell flat, and I barely remembered it. I thank God that you had like the recap at the start there, because I had to go online to reread everything that happened.
Andrew, how about yourself?
Yeah, the ship I liked. I liked the interaction between Rose and Finn, and I thought that was a great introduction to the character. But then the stuff on the planet was completely useless. It felt like they included that entire segment of the movie just as like a lead-in for that end sequence where you see the little boy like grab the room and then look up at the stars. It's like, oh, look, it's another Force user. Just seemed like that whole sequence was for that one particular scene. And I'm glad that Nathan brought up the special effects, because it brought back memories of the Obi-Wan Grievous chase scene from Revenge of the Sith. And it just like the CGI just seemed off, and I don't know, it felt like they were going to call Spock at one point to figure out what to do when they called Maz Kanata. Like it just...
Oh, I totally forgot about that scene.
It didn't make any sense whatsoever. And so I thought they could have made it a much more effective sequence just by going straight from the Resistance ship and finding a way to get on Snoke's ship. And you could have cut out the whole planet sequence. Yeah, the romance between the two that would unveil later on, like it didn't seem like there was any buildup as well. So it was just one of those forgettable scenes that ties into like the movie feeling a little bit too long. Like it was weird at one point, probably about 15 minutes before the end. I looked at my watch, like, it should be over by now. And I've never had that in the Star Wars movie, but if they cut the segment out, I think it would have been a perfect time.
Geoff?
Falls very flat for me. A couple of reviews I did read were complimentary towards our new character, Rose. I didn't care for her. She wasn't bad and the performance was fine, but this is an unnecessary character. What bothered me a lot is like our three heroes, so Poe, Finn, and Rey, they all had good, Rey and Poe didn't have any scenes in the first one, but everybody had good chemistry together, and we split them apart.
All three of them.
And Yeah, all three of them. I think that was a big mistake on the part of the movie. I mean, we kind of had to split Rey off. I understand that. She has to go see Luke. That's fine, right? I mean, that's what happened in Empire. So, okay, I'm all right with that. But Finn and Poe should have been, I think they should have been together on, I mean, they basically just invent a mission, right? For them to go off and do things. So that should have been Poe and Finn off on a mission to do stuff. They're good. They have good chemistry. Those two actors, where they worked really well together. So introducing this new character was not necessary at all. So this all fell flat. The other thing that bugged me is, and I talked about it 2 years ago with the convenience currency. They're looking for some master code breaker to tech the tech and the Empire's whatever, or the First Order. And they get thrown in a cell, and there's a guy
lo and behold.
in the cell. Yeah, does exactly what they need out of supposedly only one other guy. The only guy who could do it isn't the only guy who could do it. They get thrown in the cell with the other guy in the galaxy who can do what they need done. Was silly. It should have just been Benicio. It should have been the codebreaker they were looking for, and then they go and find him. That would have been a lot more logical. That would have helped the flow of the movie a lot more here. And the last part, and I mean, we'll talk about themes and stuff later, but the messages that they were trying to portray here about, I don't know what, the evils of the upper class, the decadence, or the, I don't know what, and some animal rights stuff like you alluded to in the synopsis. Nothing here. It was all surface level criticism of rich people. And that seems a little silly when it's coming from the richest of people in the Disney empire, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm sure Rian Johnson doesn't live in a van down by the river. Like, it doesn't fit when they do stuff. Like, it's such ham-fisted messaging from people who don't actually have no right to be giving us that message because they don't live in that world. There's no poverty amongst these individuals. All these guys were probably poor until they hit it big in Hollywood, and they are rich beyond their wildest dreams. I don't like that type of thing there. So all of that is, I didn't notice the effects one way or the other, but yeah, this was certainly the low point of the film for me.
Maybe let's, expand this. How about the actual plan? Not just about the coincidence of finding the code hacker. What about that whole idea of they have to disable this tracking through hyperspace? Was that of any interest to you at all here? You can talk about it in this segment.
It felt like, what's actually interesting? I was talking to a guy last night, and he said the exact same thing you did. It was very Star Trek. And I said it actually felt like Battlestar Galactica to me, because that was an ongoing thing on the show. There was a specific episode, in fact, the Cylons were tracking them through hyperspace. So that's kind of what it felt like to me. The whole plan it's like a made up plot. It's like, well, we need to have something happen here for these people, so we're gonna make this up. And it was silly. I thought it was stupid. I also don't like the narrative mechanism of the hacker. It's tired and it's meaningless. How do I put this? It's fun to see your heroes outwit their enemies, to either beat them in battle or a test of wills or intelligence. And when you have a hacker, that all goes out the window because they hit a few keys on a computer and you don't know what they're doing. And ding, 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 shields are down, we win. I hate that mechanism. So I didn't think that was a good choice at all. And probably we'll talk about it later. I think, and Nathan's alluded to it already, because we're picking up in the moments after The Force Awakens, Rian Johnson is a little bit handcuffed by the situation. That's like, okay, well, if it's literally the moments after, because it has to be with Luke, right when she hands him the lightsaber, that's where the story has to pick up, then what's the Resistance doing? Okay, well, they're running from the First Order, and it's like, well, if they just get away, then it's boring, I guess. I don't know. So the whole thing just feels really manufactured.
I think it ties to slowest space chase ever. If they'd done the intro to Spaceballs and just continued to do that for 20 minutes, it's still, I look back and I'm like, this makes no sense whatsoever. If they just want to wipe them out, then just wipe them out rather than just chasing them. I don't think they needed to go to a planet to get a hacker to get on the ship. Just fly out to the ship. It just seems like they can find someone. Didn't Finn used to sweep the floors or whatever on Snoke's ship? It was way too convoluted. I didn't see the necessity for it. It was one of those after the scene, did that actually just happen in terms of what their plan is? And then when you see it play out, you're like, yep, that's exactly what they did.
This plays exactly like a video game. These are sort of the same story beats that you accept when you're playing a game. It's so strange for this movie. The other thing that I don't like, I didn't really say it before, but yeah, the hacker element that Geoff brought up. As a computer programmer, I hate when movies try to do the quote unquote hacking thing, and they don't really show anything spectacular.
Unless you were hired to be the hacker, then it'd be okay.
Well, sure, okay. I mean, are you saying if I was in this movie, I would be okay with it?
Of course,
yeah. I would be the creature that Luke Skywalker is pumping the milk out of if they had something like that. I would do that. Just right. It was so undramatic. We didn't really see him do anything that was truly special. They just told us that he was special and he was doing special things. And so when it happened and he had like a little cute thing with Rose's necklace there, okay, fine, whatever. I think like the way that this is plotted, I remember even sitting in the movie thinking like, whoa, wait, what is happening? What do they have to do? It might have been the 4 cocktails I had before the movie was sort of like fuzzing my brain a little bit, but I was like, I don't know what's going on here. But I thought about it afterwards, and it was really, even the Maz Kanata stuff, it's like, is this a tie-in to Battlefront 2?
Oh, hilarious.
What is going on here?
I have that note down. It looks like she's playing
I didn't mean to steal your thunder there.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly. Yeah, I wonder. It's like she's not actually dealing with a union dispute or whatever. No, she's playing like Battlefront 2 laser tag actually, and just like took a phone call.
Yeah, why did she answer her phone? Fuck.
I agree with you guys here. I agree with Geoff. I think that this Rose character doesn't really work for me because she's completely unnecessary. Kelly Marie Tran, I believe that's the actor's name. She does a great job with what she's given. But I agree. I think Poe and maybe even 3PO. I mean, let's give 3PO something to do or something else. Like just have some other people go with Finn here instead of adding additional characters. It's already too many characters here as it is in these movies, especially when you're dealing with the old guard as well. So I would appreciate it if some additional ensemble cast members that actually come along for the ride instead of just a new character. But I agree. I think this whole thing is just terrible. It's confusing. It's convoluted. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. I like the concept of the wealthy now being shown in the Star Wars universe, but the whole setting just felt too much like Earth and something out of a James Bond movie for me to really care too much about or get invested in as part of a Star Wars universe. I wasn't a big fan of any of the creature designs. Another thing here, and you guys may have mentioned this too. What'd you guys think of the BB-8 machine gun coin scene? And he gives the Clint Eastwood gun blow here. I mean, for me, this is just not working. It's a bit too humorous. I don't know if you guys like that or not. DJ, for me, he was okay. Again, with Benicio del Toro, I wish they gave him something more meaty to play with. But, you know, his stutter and his, like, goofiness, that's all we got of him. And yeah, then the last note I mentioned here is that Maz Kanata wasted because she was playing Battlefront 2. But I did like the one line, I can't remember what it was, that she said that was something about someone satisfying her, and she then strokes her long rifle. I got a genuine laugh out of that. So, all right, so Jets, let's move on to what was probably a lot of what we really want to discuss. Luke and Rey on the island. And we'll talk about all the training stuff that Luke does with her. I really don't want to talk about Luke's character arc, so let's try and leave that discussion for when we talk about the characters after we go through the movie scenes. But you can include all the Yoda stuff in here too, the Rey and Luke stick fight and then Rey and everyone leaving, the R2s and Chewie meeting Luke again. And let's just focus on all the scenes that were actually on the island, except for when Luke is obviously meditating at the end there as the twist. So here.
Sort of high level here for the most part. These scenes did work fairly well for me. The interactions between Kylo and Rey thought were actually the best parts of the island sequences here. Adam Driver and Daisy Ridley also have good chemistry. Like, that's really good. Our leads all play really well off of each other. So there were some good scenes there. It was a neat manifestation of Force that we haven't really seen too much of, where they kind of directly interact with each other across vast distances. That was good. Her scene in the dark side cave there was interesting. I'm still not sure what to make of it. So, maybe you guys can help me out with the coding. Like, visually, it looked good. It was some new visual styles that we hadn't seen in Star Wars here, and I appreciated that. The lessons. Okay, one thing that I was looking forward to, especially after I saw the first teaser for this, was, are we going to get some insight into the history of the Jedi, the religion,
or even new concepts on the Force itself?
Right,
yes.
Or new concepts on the Force. From the teaser, we could see those texts, which I presumed and was correct that, those are in Luke's possession there, and they were. So I thought, okay, maybe this would be really neat. Like, maybe Luke will have some knowledge that had been lost to the Jedi for so many centuries, like lost, tucked away in this little tree on this island here. And I thought that would be really, really neat to explore that because, as he says, it's time for the Jedi to end. And he gives a couple of items as to why he thinks that. That was a cool message. We can maybe talk about it in his character arc as well, but that was a neat message there. He was like, Force is everywhere. It surrounds everything. And for the Jedi to think that they can use that is selfish. I thought that was really interesting. I wish we explored some more of that. I guess on the one hand, it left me wanting more. It didn't give me enough, but that's a good thing too. Like you want to want more, but it wasn't quite satisfying enough to me. Daisy Ridley and Mark Hamill thought they played well off of each other. Again, the Jedi led the 3 lessons because he only gives her the 2 lessons, right, before she leaves, if I'm not mistaken. So
that is true.
Lesson 3 perhaps comes in episode 9 when he's a blue glowy. I mean, it was funny. I thought it was funny when has her sit on the rock. He's like, reach out. And she fucking reaches out. I love how she does it, like her body language was great. It's good for a laugh, and then he just fucks with her. I thought that was good because he's kind of turned into Luke was always a little sarcastic, but he's really cultivated that into some harsh old man cynicism, and that felt fun. I guess we can get into his arc later, but good scenes all around. Even the extraordinary weirdness of him milking an alien for green milk. For some reason, I mean, I was just like, but I don't know. For some reason, it fit. For some reason, like I was like, yeah, he's just a weird old hermit.
I love that scene personally.
Old hermits do weird old hermit shit. Yeah.
Well, I love that scene, and I love how he like switched the milk around in his mouth, and it's dripping down his beard, and he just kind of grins at Ray. But I thought that was pretty good. So, okay. Andrew, you're up next.
Well, I think Geoff put it best when he said that it left him wanting more. The sequences on the island were, I think, by far my favorite ones. But at the same time, there was so much more that I expected to see based upon like the buildup that we had with the trailers, but also like what I was anticipating from even Star Wars Rebels. Like where there is more development of an area of the Force that we hadn't been exposed to. But at the same time, like I think the acting was at its best, these particular sequences, and like the interactions between Rey and Luke. I thought those were great. The interactions between Rey and Kylo, those were awesome. The Porgs weren't, I have to admit, I did like the inclusion of the Porgs, although it was kind of weird to see Chewie cooking 2 in front of them, but it's for comedic relief. I really enjoyed it. But I still wanted to see more in terms of her development as a Force user. It didn't quite happen, but I'll hold off my conversation about the Yoda sequence because that was easily my favorite part of the movie.
No. So this is the part to talk about it.
Okay, then I'll talk about the Yoda sequence. I was just giggling like a little schoolboy in my seat. Wesley could see just how much I was enjoying it. It felt like the Yoda that we'd always wanted to see. Like it was puppet Yoda from Empire Strikes Back, and him just having a ball and kind of making fun of Luke and trying to teach him the ways of like, just because you're a master doesn't mean you can't learn more. Like you have to become the learner again because that's just how masters grow. And him just kind of doing Luke's dirty work for him. I loved that teaching sequence. It was a focal point of the conversation after the movie, and it felt right. It wasn't one of those fan service moments that The Force Awakens was filled with. It truly made sense, especially when it came to Luke's development in this particular movie. I loved it. I can't wait to see it. Like it's just going to be one that I'll watch over and over again just because I really like the interplay between Luke and Yoda. I think it was an essential part of his character development for the movie.
Nathan.
So I was sort of surprised that neither of you guys brought up the first scene there with Luke when he tosses the lightsaber, which I think was sort of symbolic of what this film does. It's like, okay, everything you think or expect may happen, yeah, that's gone. Go away now. And I think that kind of played out. I think there's sort of like a meta element to him doing that, how fans react to this movie, which I think is almost like a separate discussion. But all the scenes with Luke and Rey really worked for me. I thought all the humor that came out of Luke, I think Mark Hamill really delivered a lot of the time with the humor. Geoff, you're right. This is a more cranky Luke Skywalker, and most of his jokes landed for me. I'm not sure how I feel about the Luke Kylo Ren scenes. I like these actors, but there was something weird about introducing this element where they're both connected to each other, and I don't know how I feel. I think I need to see it again.
So you mean the Rey and Kylo Ren connection is what you're talking about?
Yes, what did I say?
You said Luke Kylo, so I thought you meant the flashbacks.
Oh, sorry.
You can also talk about those flashbacks here. Andrew and Geoff, I'll circle back to you guys about this stuff too.
Yeah, the Rey and Kylo scenes, I'm not really sure how well that worked for me. I sort of understood, like, it was sort of necessary to have these two characters together. Like, if they just sort of met at the end there, it would have been just really weird. And then I thought showing the different perspectives of Luke's story of how Kylo Ren turned and then Kylo Ren's version of events, I thought that was a really strong point of the film. I kind of feel like, again, like there's sort of like the training is not really any training. It's even less than what you get on Dagobah in Empire. But I also think that there's also a bit of an FU to the prequels. And like, yeah, everything you knew about the Jedi, yeah, they're a bunch of jackasses who didn't really know what they were doing and had the rug pulled out from underneath them. Overall, like these were some of my more favorite scenes, but because they're kind of broken up a little bit, again, I would have to sort of see it again, but there's something weird about the pacing of it because it feels like they kind of cheat with with the cuts and the time, because this all happens within like 48 hours, it feels like, the whole movie. But they're sort of playing with time a little bit, it feels like, in order to sort of extend out this thing. Because she just kind of went down to the planet, landed, stayed overnight and left, it feels like. And so I guess
like
maybe I wanted...
Maybe 2 or 3 days she was there.
At best, right? That is also another thing that I think a lot of people fall on different sides. Like, is this working? We expected a training sequence. And as I said, like throwing the lightsaber was, I think, symbolic of like, no, forget all that. We're doing something else here.
Before we circle back to you guys, Nathan, how about you just chime in here, because then here's your chance to talk about just what was presented on the screen regarding Rey confronting Luke after she finds out or is, tricked or not or lied to or whatever from her Force talks with Kylo, that Luke attempted to murder her. You get that stick fight and then her pleading to Luke afterwards. And then how about just Luke getting very quick minor scenes here with Chewie and R2-D2? Any comments there?
Yeah, it was all just too short for me. Again, I know I keep saying, I'm going to keep saying, I wish I had a chance to see the movie again. I don't know. I actually barely even remember it. So obviously it didn't resonate with me. The stick fight, I'm not sure that really resonated with me. I did like the idea of showing how Kylo Ren turned from the two different perspectives of what Luke was like, what he was actually trying to do. I mean, he essentially does corroborate what Kylo Ren said, but what Kylo Ren doesn't see is like in his master's moment of weakness, like, oh, he actually is like, oh, he's not going to murder in his sleep. And I thought that was actually, a pretty powerful character moment, showing that Luke Skywalker is not the man you think he was. Like, he's kind of this broken old man because one of his greatest failures. In a way, it sort of harkens back to the original trilogy of Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, like, look, I failed Anakin Skywalker as a teacher, and now I created this monster. And so this is kind of echoes that, which I like. But some of the other scenes, one thing I do want to say, the porg eating scene, that really disturbed me. And like, it got a laugh in the theater, and I'm like, no joke. Like, I'm like, this is not cool. Borderline offended by it. So they're not real or anything like that. I was actually more offended at the fact that people laughed at this, and it is played for laughs. Like, this is disturbing.
Well, what I like the most out of it is, it's not about the porg's reaction. I just love the two dummy legs coming out of that fake chicken that he's holding.
I'm just wondering where the scene was in Return of the Jedi.
Oh, God. I almost didn't want to bring it up. No, I'm sorry. This is just not cool for me. And like, it puts a real sour taste in my mouth that this scene is even in this movie.
Interesting. Okay. Andrew.
The stick fight scene, I think, didn't remember it that well. It's like looking back on it.
It is very, very quick.
I wish there had been more development in terms of the Jedi training at the Academy. That's something that I felt was missing in this whole sequence, and it wasn't touched upon very much. And based upon what we saw briefly in Force Awakens, I thought there'd be more expansion on that. Chewie was Chewie, and R2-D2 was R2-D2. Like, it was fun seeing like Luke and the Falcon, but no, I don't really have too much to add beyond what Nathan said.
Geoff?
I will say it was awesome to see Luke spark up that green lightsaber again.
Yeah.
In a moment of murderous rage.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
I'll say this. I love the fact that you get the green lightsaber, but I'll say this. I think it was staged very, very poorly. The way it was shot, and you see him kind of reminded me of, Revenge of the Sith. and you had Count Dooku who was going to chop up old Obi-Wan at the beginning, and he raised his lightsaber up and he looked like he was going to fall back because he's so old. Do you remember that? Like, yeah. So this is what that felt like. I thought it was staged. This is not Mark Hamill's fault. This was Rian Johnson's fault. That scene should have been presented as something very, very, epic and shocking. And it just was really, I'm almost chuckling at that.
There's almost something weird about the way it's lit, too.
Yeah, the way it's lit.
Did anyone else? Parts of it look like it's like hand drawn.
I agree. I did notice that too about how it was lit, but I think that was deliberate as flashback so that we know we're flashing back. It looks different. It feels different. I think that was on purpose.
All right. Well, then I'll chime in here with everything on the island here. I agree with Nathan. I love the first moment when Luke throws it away again, saying this is not going to go how you think. I mean, I did have a minor chuckle on that. I like the scenes of Rey following Luke around, milking Mrs. Zoidberg and the pole vault fishing. I thought those are some really good cinematic shots there when he kind of leapt from one side of the rock to the other. I like those scenes there. I loved Chewie with Luke. When that door blasted open, I thought that was going to be Rey who blew it in, and it was Chewie, actually. And I was just hoping that they would linger on Chewie and Luke more, and they just cut away. And that's kind of the same thing with R2-D2. It was so welcome to see them back together, and your heart starts to almost flutter. You're getting, emotional, and it's like, that's it. It left me really, really wanting more. But I love the line how he says to R2, that was a cheap shot, when he shows the hologram. I like his first lesson that he gives Rey. I agree with you, Geoff. I like her body language, how she, she's so, energetic, how she reaches out, but she's not really understanding what he means. But I felt that was, played for a bit of humor, and that's fine. It worked. And the tickling, oh, that's the Force, I can feel it. But that was it felt like that was not Luke Skywalker and Rey. It felt that was Mark Hamill and Daisy Ridley having fun. It's almost like a cutscene, like a rehearsal scene. But then that was the best one they used. So that's kind of how I felt about it. I thought there was a bit too much humor with the caretakers, with Rey cutting the rock and all that stuff and shooting through the wall, and the caretakers having, complaining about it. But I did like how when Rey's practicing, she takes out the lightsaber and you can see that smile on her face and she's just practicing by herself. I'd like those scenes with Rey by herself like that. Unfortunately, there was no lessons from Luke, regarding lightsabers or Force training. I actually disagree with you there, Nathan. I love the Chewie and the Porg eating scenes.
God.
Yes, I do. I love it. It worked for me, but I'm not a big fan of the Porgs themselves. I mean, they're too much, but I loved that particular scene. I'll echo what you guys already said before. Love the scenes with her and Kylo. I thought those were some of the stronger scenes in the movie, and it went somewhere with a twist, so it has a payoff, and that's why I like it even more. Again, with the flashback stuff between Luke and Ben, I like the fact that Luke has a weakness and he was contemplating on killing his nephew. I think it's a good idea. We'll talk about the character arc and stuff like that, but I just wanted to throw this out here too, and you guys may have missed this. I caught it both times, but maybe you guys may not have. Luke says this specifically when he's talking about his flashbacks. Kylo killed some students in the academy.
And
he took some others.
Yeah.
So did those guys form the Knights of Ren or go on to become part of the Knights of Ren? And that might be something interesting that may happen in episode 9. But then going back to Luke, if that's the case, does he not care about his other students too? It's just Kylo Ren? Like, doesn't he have a responsibility to them as well?
Yeah, it blew over that pretty quick. I did pick it up and I thought, oh, that's going to come back. Like, maybe we're going to see some more Force users towards the end of the movie and, have a big, massive lightsaber battle or something like that. But after the movie was over and I was thinking about it, I kind of thought, yeah, maybe some of them also became the Knights of Ren.
Mm-hmm. That could be the backstory there of who those guys are. Aside from seeing how Luke was living and Kylo and Rey talking, I thought the best scenes on the island, as you guys have mentioned, were Luke and Yoda. It just felt so right having those two interact together again. I got a little teary-eyed because it just worked so well. Even though Yoda looked a little off, like, the netherworld there, do they lose teeth? Because it looked like his mouth was, like, folding in. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Like, his mouth was actually... Yeah,
he did look off. I guess he's still age when you're one with the Force. He's still like, you kind of get a little bit older.
I guess so. Yeah, he's got no teeth in the netherworld. He doesn't need.
But more than that, like the dialogue for Yoda. Yeah. I mean, that was one thing I did not like that much in the prequels, and I noticed it again when I was rewatching them, was that The way he talks was very different than the original trilogy, and this felt like original trilogy Yoda.
Yeah.
Yes, it did.
Not just his look, but the way he talks.
Brilliant scenes here with Yoda. We'll talk about the arc because Yoda dishes some advice that to me is very common sense and surprising that Luke does not learn or does not even know, but that's something we could talk about in the character arcs there. Stick fight was awesome seeing Luke and Rey go at it, even though it was such a short time, but I was still a little disappointed. I don't know if you guys noticed or remember, Rey kind of cheap shots Luke in the back of the head. I mean, Luke does need a slap across the face a little bit just to remind him of who he's supposed to be, but I didn't like the fact that Rey cheap shots Luke from behind, like she just rams her stick into his head as he's walking away, and I didn't like that. I think that diminishes her character in my eyes a little bit, even though she's doing the right thing and she's asking the right questions. But that comes across poorly to me. But she's just still not as compelling as I would like her to be. And I agree with you that I'm not really sure what exactly Luke ended up teaching her, beyond reach out with your feelings, which he may have already partially learned at knows anyways. I just didn't get enough here with the teaching stuff and then the stuff about the Force or any new aspects of the Force. I agree with you, Geoff. This is something that in the teaser, they give you the impression that this is something that's coming. It makes a lot of sense that Luke would go off and is starting to try and learn something new because that was one of his shortfalls and that's maybe the lessons he was going to be learning from his failures, but we didn't get any of that here. And I found that extremely disappointing. So let's move on to the next piece of storyline here. Let's talk about the Resistance storyline on the Resistance cruiser with Leia, Poe, and new character Vice Admiral Holdo, played by Laura Dern. And the slow chase with the First Order continually chasing them throughout the entire movie, even though you really don't see much of that chase. Nathan, please start us off.
There's some nice interactions because you do have some good actors here, but for the most part, pretty forgettable, I think. In fact, in a lot of ways, many of the problems that they encountered later would have just been solved if Holdo had said, no, look, this is what we're doing, and just stick with me and we're going to get through this, right? And it's a lot of Poe's impulsiveness that causes a lot of trouble. I think overall, some of these scenes just don't really land, even though you have a lot of strong actors. Also, the idea of this chase, it's really strange. It kind of slows down the pacing because I don't really feel a lot of tension in this idea of their slowly being kind of run down. And you would see some of the other Resistance ships be destroyed as they would run out of fuel, except the main one kept going. But I was left wanting out of this because I thought that, okay, this is sort of a neat idea that you have General Leia sort of taken out of commission, and then you have this new admiral take over. I thought they're going to play a little bit more with, is she working for the Resistance? Is she maybe going to double cross them? Is she actually incompetent? And Poe is going to reveal. So, there was some kind of neat ideas kind of going on, and there was not that much payoff. I suppose the payoff was that, no, Holdo actually did know what she was doing this whole time, and Poe was kind of a dum-dum and should have just listened to her. But it left me wanting.
Mm-hmm. I want to kind of wrap up everything with Holdo. So, how about give you a couple other things to talk about here? You can say all the way up to Holdo's sacrifice. So we can go all the way up to there. You could talk about Carrie. How about Leia and her scenes, her ability to use the Force, that scene? Anything else you can think about? Any of the other Resistance people there? Not that there's much people to talk about, but continue, Nathan, here.
Well, give me a second. I'm just raising a glass for Admiral Akbar.
Yes. Yeah, I'll refill for Akbar. I'm refilling for Akbar.
Yeah.
How about this? Just comment. The fact that it was just an off-the-cuff comment that he's gone.
That sucked.
It was weird. It was truly strange that it was this a totally off-the-cuff remark. Again, I sort of think that what this movie is doing a lot of is throw away all your expectations and we're going in a totally new direction. And I get sometimes that does happen in war, right? Where someone is killed and then you have to kind of move on from that. But you're talking about a fairly well-known character to the fans. I don't know about the casual fan necessarily, and I know he didn't get a lot of play.
He was in episode
Force
7.
Awakens.
Yeah,
I know, but he had one line in Force Awakens, so sort of towards the, but he's there, right? But yeah, sort of the casualness of it, and that's actually some of my larger problems with the movie is sort of the casualness of this. General Leia's the way she's able to kind of save herself, a little bit strange But I mean, we're getting some, I don't think it's strange in the sense that I don't think that like a Force user can do this, but we haven't really learned like what she can do with the Force. Maybe it was a bit of a Hail Mary on her part and she was able to pull herself in like that. It did look very like Mary Poppins-esque, though. It was very odd. And I remember actually when it happened, I was like, oh, they totally changed the movie because of the death of Carrie Fisher. Like, boom, she's gone. I thought that would have been like a pretty shocking death if they'd killed her like that, especially when they're killed by faceless TIE fighter pilots. And I think the final sacrifice by Holdo there, actually, one other thing I want to bring up, I read this, I think, yesterday, is that Holdo is actually a character that was previously introduced in a book, which is considered canon after Disney had bought Lucasfilm. They have their whole story group. And so everything that comes out as Star Wars is canon, books, games, whatever. And so I thought that was kind of neat that they introduced a character from a book. Mm-hmm. So I think her final sacrifice, again, we don't have enough time with this character, and because I feel like they were playing with the audience a little bit, whereas, like, what is she doing? What side is she on? That the final sacrifice, although visually looked really cool, I don't think had that much emotional payoff for me. I mean, it's not great or anything like that, and I like Laura Dern, but it wasn't quite as epic as I thought it could have been. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe they could change it around. It was Akbar who did the sacrifice or something. I don't know.
That would have been interesting.
Not enough payoff for me.
Maybe that might have also been very acceptable too.
Yeah.
Again, another instance here where we're introducing characters, and the question should be, do we really need to be introducing new characters when you have so many people to play with already?
That's a really good point to bring up. And even though other movies have brought in new characters, I mean, sometimes too, I mean, with nostalgia, like maybe colors that a little bit, but I sort of feel like a character like Lando Calrissian, a brand new character, has much more weight to the story, whereas some of these characters that are introduced and they're brand new don't have nearly as much weight to them. And so with a sacrifice by Holdo, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah. Andrew, how about yourself?
It felt like filler. Like, Holdo's rationale for not telling Poe still doesn't make any sense. Like, there's only, 300 of them left? Like, you'd think she'd be able to say, it's like, well, we're just going to go over there and then we're going to evacuate and everything's okay. But don't worry, they won't see the ships flying out. They'll just, I don't know. The whole sequence to me didn't make much sense. Looking back on it, the sequences with Leia, I thought it's tough to see because of Carrie Fisher's death, but I thought just her overall acting in the sequences in this whole movie were great. And I know we'll talk about her later. The sequence with the bridge being blown out and Admiral Akbar dying, the whole leadership group dying. Nathan said it, I think they could have had it be that much more shocking, but then to have Akbar be a throwaway just really took away from the sequence itself. Holdo didn't need to be there. I don't get the introduction of a character that we have no emotional connection to making that type of sacrifice. And granted, that sequence was amazingly beautifully, I'm not sure if you could say shot, but just cutting through Snoke's ship was awesome. That was a jaw-dropping scene. The space stuff didn't make much sense. Seems to be a struggle of episode 7 and 8 to get the space battles done correctly, even though Rogue One, I thought actually did the best job of a space battle in quite some time. So I don't know. It was one of those where I was just waiting for the next sequence with Rey or Luke to start.
Mm-hmm. How about yourself, Geoff?
It was a shame about Admiral Akbar, wasn't it? I mean, It's a Trap was a meme before there were memes.
Yes.
So it's too bad. He was always a fringe character, so I guess it's not too bad. I mean, Admiral Laura Dern's version of the Picard maneuver was pretty fucking wicked, I will say that. I mean, that was awesome. But she, as far as new characters go, I thought she was probably the best new character. I mean, she was better than Rose. I had this conversation with my spouse, and she was like, no, Poe had to learn leadership, and, because I was like, why didn't she just tell him? She's like, well, he had to learn for himself if he's going to be the next leader of the resistance. I'm like, yeah, all right, except, you don't play games like that when you're moments away from being destroyed. Why didn't she just tell everybody, you got to evacuate everybody into these shuttles, right? Okay, everybody, here's the plan. Get in the shuttles. We're going to throw a little smoke screen. We're going to head out to this planet. They're going to blow up this ship. Nobody will ever be the wiser. That's the plan. Everybody good? Okay. And everybody be like, oh, God, fucking hey, good plan. But so that didn't really add up. I guess Poe learned a valuable lesson, but at pretty great cost. And I don't know I don't know if he learned the lesson or not. But I guess the lesson being, which is kind of good to work into Star Wars, is you're not always going to get what you need just by blowing shit up. So that was neat to work in there. And that's why I think these scenes were little more than filler, like whatever that planet, the gambling planet was called.
Canto Bight.
Canto Bight.
It's a blight to me, but that's
a blight, yeah. So these scenes were more effective than those scenes. There's a little bit more go. That, you can't just blow shit up and expect to win. Like, that message hits a little bit better than the rich people are bad and animals are good message from the casino. So I guess that was fine. I like the Mary Poppins scene because it's nice to see Leia use the Force. I guess we'll never have our questions answered as to how proficient she is, and which I guess is fine, but
you may get it in some novels. You'll just probably have to read.
Well, yeah, I'm not doing that. I mean, I know that the novels and the comic books and all of that stuff is all canon now, but as far as I'm concerned, the movies are the movies, and
that's it to me too.
And that's it. That's what it's got to be. So that was kind of neat. I thought that worked fine, but yeah, what the fuck was up with this space scene? I mean, I remember there was one scene, there was a view screen, and you could see sort of the range of the First Order fleet.
They were not that far away.
Circle, and they were just outside. Well, it's hard to depict the distance and scale in space while still making it visually interesting for the audience, because realistically, outside of a few 100 kilometers, you wouldn't see anything. Mm-hmm. Like, it would just be blackness in space. You wouldn't be able to see them. And they were probably farther away than that. I'm sorry, don't they have starfighters for just such a purpose? Okay, if the big dreadnought can't close distance...
Yeah, why don't they launch a whole bunch of TIE fighters?
Yeah, but, send some TIE fighters, bro. Like, that seems pretty elementary to me. Are they outside of the range of the TIE fighters? Because if they are, they didn't say so. Then they should have said so if that was the case, because that whole thing just was really poorly done. I think the impression we're supposed to get is it's kind of like a couple of submarines, and you can only go as fast as you can go. It's not like you can jump ahead or whatever. And okay, that's fine. Again, kind of a Battlestar Galactica situation there. But, scrambling fighters would have been the thing to do. And you got to have another space if that's what they had done, and the Resistance was able to sort of fight off the squadrons of TIE fighters. Then maybe that would have fit. They just didn't explain it. I think I understood what they were going for, but I'm having to fill in a lot of gaps myself. And I don't feel like I should be doing that for them. They should be doing that for me, right? So that was a really unfortunate and a large misstep, because the whole movie revolves around that scenario. Like, that's the whole movie.
That's the MacGuffin of the movie, really.
Yeah, it really is. You take that away, there is no movie here. So because it's such a large piece, you need to make it work, and it didn't. So that's a real shame.
How about just Carrie Fisher's acting here? Was there any improvement here for you, Geoff, over episode 7?
Big time improvement for her. She was not showing the rust that she was showing in The Force Awakens. I thought she seemed a lot more comfortable in the role, had some better lines. It was nice to see her. Obviously it's a little bittersweet, but the bell tolls for us all sooner or later. And, one thing is, when it happens, at least you can leave something behind. And she, it's not like she was going to win an Oscar for the role, but the thing that made her famous, the most iconic thing she ever did, I'm not going to say the most important thing she ever did, because she had a really good career in Hollywood doing other, as a script doctor. But, for her to close it out like this, I thought was nice. Nice to see. She had a good amount of screen time, right amount of, things to do for that character. That was one of the positives for me.
I agree with you. For me, all of these scenes here, the strongest aspect of it is Carrie Fisher's performance. I thought she did an amazing job. She's actually one of the better aspects of the movie that I do enjoy. I'm not 100% sold on her space Mary Poppins scene. I love the fact that she can use the Force, but just felt, could we not have demonstrated this in a situation where I can believe she would survive something a little easier? Like, protecting herself from explosion, just being a very simple example. I think that could have been avoided, because I know that's a gripe with a lot of people that I talk to. I may be on the opposite of you guys. I do like Holdo quite a bit. You mentioned it, Geoff. She is the best addition out of all the new characters, but I do like her presence here. I loved her sacrifice. Her ramming the Star Cruiser into Snoke's ship at light speed was fucking incredible. One of the better scenes of the movie. It also talk about this idea, and we'll bring it up with the themes, but I'll just drop it, this nugget here. It's the spark to ignite the fire, inspiration stuff. You know, I'm getting this across the entire movie, and it's ham-fisted to me. We'll talk about that a little later, but I did like those scenes. The post scenes and that mutiny subplot between him himself and Holdo, ridiculous. I think it was just to give something for Oscar Isaac to do. And again, going back, this is where he really should have been just going to Canto Bight with Finn, and that would have solved all of this nonsense, and you wouldn't have had to have had it. The continual space chase, I won't add anything further. It is absolutely ridiculous, and I think it just slows the movie to a crawl. It does not make a lot of sense, and I think it was a terrible idea to begin with. I just want to make mention here, we hardly see C-3PO again, just a little thing here, and that still upsets me to this day. He's not a prime character in the sense that his prime importance to the story, but I mean, I could use a little bit more 3PO if you're going to have him there. He doesn't need to be just wallpaper candy or whatever it is. But let's move on. Now we're going to get into what I'm sure some of you guys would really want to talk about. Everything on Snoke's ship. Let's just maybe focus on Snoke's throne room scenes. There's two specific scenes. One with him and Kylo Ren himself, when he kind of chastises Kylo, remove the helmet and all that stuff, and, you know, he's showing his disappointment in his apprentice. And then later with Rey surrendering herself to Kylo Ren, and he brings her before Snoke, and all of that playing out, and the battles.
I like the chastising scene where he's like, take that ridiculous thing off.
Well, I was hoping it'd be a mustache removal, just like in the UHF.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like an army dad whose son comes home with like a nose ring or something, like, because he's rebelling. It's like, fucking grow up, you little baby. So that was a lot of fun. Okay, so the throne room, Rey, Kylo, and Snoke. That was fucking awesome. I don't know how you guys feel, but man, that was so rad. I mean, when Kylo starts turning that lightsaber, I'm like, oh shit. What's going on? Is he actually? And he fucking cuts him in half with Luke's old lightsaber there, and the slow motion scene, and they start smoking those Imperial Guards. Man, that was so good. Everything else in this movie aside, all the problems, like that sequence, I thought was one of the finest Star Wars sequences of all the films. That was so good. It played so well. It was a huge surprise.
How shocked were you?
I was so shocked. I was blown away that happened. Like, Kylo starts turning the lightsaber, and like, because Snoke could see into his mind, right? But he's got him fooled the whole time. I'm like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And then he just cut down. I couldn't believe it. I was completely blown away. I was more surprised than Snoke was. Good fight scene there too. I thought the choreography was great. You know, neat to see a lightsaber battle with, you know, against enemies who weren't Jedi with lightsabers. So you could do some different things there, right? You're not sort of hemmed in by just a sword on sword fighting there. You've got the different weapons. That was cool. The look of the Praetorian Guards was really good as well. I think they nailed the design there, and the throne room looked really good. You guys remember from the second trailer, I mean, the lines in the movie, obviously the scene from the second trailer where Luke says, this is not going to go the way you think. That scene was what he was talking about for me, and I loved it. I loved Rey, and I mean, we can call him Ben or Kylo at this point. I mean, people were cheering in the theater, like when that lightsaber, when she caught the lightsaber. Yeah, Harry, yeah, I remember the cheers. I almost cheered myself. That was so good.
Sorry, but she caught the lightsaber? Or when Snoke was cut down? That was the cheer.
When he gets cut in half, the lightsaber comes across, she grabs it, and then they kind of like stand back to back there. That's when the cheer went up, I'm pretty sure.
Nathan can chime in when it's his turn. He can give the definitive answer there.
So after the fight's over there, and she's like, okay, like, we got to shut down this attack, like the whole thing, and he's like, no, you need to join me. Like,
just let the past die. Let the past die.
Yeah, let the past die. And I love that line too. Let the past die. Kill it. You know, like, join me. Like, we're the ones who should be running the show here. So, like, come with me. And there was a hint of a romantic attraction there a couple times in the movie. And this is the second point, I think, which I'm not sure where that's going to go. But it's interesting because, you know, he's evil and she's good. But I thought it worked great. The tug of war with the lightsaber was really neat too. And it gets cut in half by the light speed jump that we referred to in the last section there. So that was pretty cool too. All in all, the whole movie was worth it for that sequence.
Andrew.
Yeah, it was awesome and totally unexpected. Like, I would have expected that sequence in episode 9. Like, if it went down the formulaic pathway that most of the Star Wars movies have been up to this point, like, that's the type of sequence you'd see culminate in, like, the 3 movies. And to have that occur in the middle movie of the trilogy, like, I was just, like, my jaw was open, and, like, everyone else was watching the movie, and I was, like, looking at resting, like, what just happened? And it was, that sequence was awesome. And the two of them fighting the rest of the Praetorian Guard, like, that was, like, you didn't know which way it was going to go. And that's what I enjoyed about it the most. It's like, it was just completely unexpected. Disappointed that we didn't get more about Snoke, though. That was one element. I wanted to see more development, like how Snoke played into the overall universe. That not being explored certainly was a little disappointing, but I don't care. Like, that was just something I didn't see coming. And both sequences were acted extremely well, and, like, the physicality of the lightsaber scene and the originality of it too. I watched a review today where they're saying it's like this was the first movie where there wasn't an actual lightsaber to lightsaber combat. I don't mind. Like, that was freaking awesome. So yeah, overall it was definitely one of my favorite parts of the movie and had me on the edge of my seat, and I can't wait to watch it again.
Okay, if I forgot to mention one thing, I'll come back to you. How about the reveal of Rey's parents here?
That worked for me. I think it was a good choice. I assume that this had been already dreamed up by JJ or whomever would have been in charge of that type of decision. And I think that was the best thing they could have done. You know, if you guys remember, we did speculate on this 2 years ago. And I know that it's been out there on the internet that maybe she was a Kenobi. And here, I think you said maybe she's a Kenobi and a Skywalker. And there were different theories like that. I think none of that.
We said that it was either that or she's related to no one.
Yeah, and related to no one, but not only related to no one, but like her parents are losers. I thought that was really good. I mean, I've heard people say, well, it kind of echoes Anakin and all that stuff, and whatever. But Snoke's line is like, darkness rises and light to meet it. So the suggestion to me was that, you know, we have the Skywalker line, so we have the rise of darkness in Ben Solo, and then the Force like balances that out. It gives rise to light in somebody else to combat it, and it could have been absolutely anyone, and it was just some rando. And I think that's great. I think that was really smart. Obviously, it doesn't have like a gee whiz, oh wow, okay, I can't believe it moment, but that's fine, because I think if they had tried to make it something like just nuts, make it meaningful, as in, like, let's say she was Obi-Wan's granddaughter or whatever, I think it would have fallen flat. I don't think it would have played well. So good choice there.
I think they're going to undo it in episode 9.
No.
Like, it makes sense. Like, everything that Geoff said, I agree with it. I like it. But there's just this part of me that's like, it doesn't feel as if everything's there. Like, it felt more of a way for Kylo to help try to turn her. Like, granted, he said, like, she's always known. It's one of those aspects of JJ that I'm nervous about.
What do you think then? What's your theory?
I don't know. That's where I'm a little bit afraid, because I'm perfectly okay with the explanation that was provided.
The only thing I'll add,
The
only thing I'll add here, gentlemen, is that Geoff, you had alluded to the JJ. This came from JJ's brain. It did not. Ryan made this decision. I was reading a recent interview, and this is definitely one of his themes, that the Force will come from anybody, and anybody can be a hero. But this had nothing to do with JJ. Ryan made the decision.
Yeah, and that's what's awesome. Like, I like the direction that Ryan. Like, granted, like, there were some flaws in this movie, and overall, like, I liked how he approached it. But that's where it's like, with JJ taking over for episode 9, I am worried. So while it's like, I agree with Geoff, and it's like, okay, that makes complete sense, I agree with this, there's this dread of like, please don't do anything to it. Like, just don't touch it. Just accept this and move on. But I know JJ can't help it, and that's where I'm concerned.
Okay, Nathan, you have yet to chime in on any of these scenes. Talk about it all.
Okay, this is a lot to unpack here. So one thing that I really liked was the design of Snoke's throne room. I thought it looked really great. I thought the design of it was really neat. Although I do have questions as to why. Like, I think there were maybe, and we'll probably never find this out, but I think there were some suggestions that he kind of came from outside the Empire, potentially. This may be more for the books and stuff like that. And so as to why his guards were sort of reminiscent of the Emperor's royal guards, whatever, but they looked really cool. One thing we haven't really talked about too much is General Hux, and he's a little bit, I don't want to say buffoonish, but I feel like he's a little bit less threatening in this movie. But there was one moment that I really liked in that first throne room scene where he's leaving and he gives Kylo Ren like this look, like,
stink eye. He gives a stink eye.
Yeah.
He's in competition with him. I like that. Yeah.
He is like, oh, Dad's pissed with you, kind of thing. I thought the overall look, I was actually worried going into this movie what Snoke would look like because like it was a hologram and stuff, but there was something very unreal about the look of him in Force Awakens. It's no Caesar, but like overall, like he looks pretty good as Snoke, Andy Serkis. I thought it was funny when he said, take that ridiculous thing off. Because again, I think that's another thing about this movie is like, we're tearing down the old world of Star Wars. You don't need a mask that, you're trying to emulate, your grandfather kind of thing. Because that was like it was a very minor point in the last film. And I feel like this is like, again, like Kylo Ren is like, I'm tearing down all these things of the past. Forget about it. Then later on with the scene, the death of Snoke. Okay, so this is how I remember the cheering. You guys are completely wrong. It was because I stood up and took all my clothes off and people were yelling and screaming at that scene. No, I think actually the way I remember it is that when it was actually kind of both. There was a lot of like audible gasps, I think, from the audience. Yeah. When he was killed. And then there was a little bit of, I don't remember cheering, but I do remember hearing people like, whoa, like that.
No, there was only one Chumpa Wumpa who like cheered out.
Yeah, like it wasn't the audience erupted.
No.
Or when the fight happened. I mean, there was some like, woo kind of things going on maybe, but I mean, it wasn't like out of control. It's not like, oh, I can't hear the movie anymore because people are losing their minds.
Things are different here in America. When it started.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, man, in your theater, someone must have been getting sliced themselves where you were sitting when that happened. It was the perfect opportunity.
Also, don't underestimate the American appetite for murder.
For blood.
So, yeah. I don't know, like, I don't remember it that well, like some of the Snoke-Rey interaction. But
they don't say much. He just says, I think he probes her, and then he says, "Oh, so Skywalker."
That's a great way to put it too. Actually, he probed her right.
He probes her mind, and then I think he says, "Girl, so Skywalker wants to die. Okay, we'll give him that. We'll bombard his Acto as soon as I'm done with you." And then that's when he gives her to Kylo, and then there you go.
You know what I like that I didn't mention, if I could jump in there, that he didn't make some big play to try to turn to the dark side or anything. He's like, we're going to take what we want from you, and then we're going to kill you.
Yeah,
that was good.
I did like that. Yeah, overall, the fight sequence I thought worked really well. I kind of remember also, too, the score at this point I don't remember it being that epic. Again, like this plays into sort of like the larger themes of the movie. It's like, forget everything you knew about previous Star Wars movies. We are turning everything on its head and we're going in new directions because not only the death of Snoke, but the reveal of Rey's parents. These were two big things coming out of the first movie. And I mean, I'm really mixed on a lot of this. And I think the last movie legitimately posed these questions of who is Snoke and who are Rey's parents. And both of those ideas were almost in a way tossed aside. I get that they're sort of in a bad position where they had to decide, okay, like it's a no-win scenario where how are you going to resolve this mystery set up by JJ, the ultimate mystery box man, who said, here's the mystery box, you figure it out. So I do kind of understand the idea that, yeah, her parents were sort of nobodies, because that actually is a little bit more logical. In the prequel era, I mean, where did any Jedi come from?
Yeah, right? Just regular people.
They're all just
they're all regular people. And I was going to bring that up too.
In fact, I can't believe I never really thought about it, but there was like a weird logic problem in the prequels of if Jedi don't have children, then how would more Jedis be made? Because there's sort of this implication that Skywalker is like, well, who is his father kind of thing? Like, what does it matter? Like Anakin Skywalker, when what's-his-face asked that, like, it doesn't matter. So they should actually just appear spontaneously out of nowhere, midichlorians aside. And so it does absolutely make sense that they did this. I think with time, I think people will maybe come around to this idea. I don't think it's sitting that well with fans to a certain, I don't know about this group, but I think it was definitely the smart choice. And then I did really like Kylo Ren trying to not really turn Rey. It was just like, we can forge an entirely new path right now, right here. Like, forget about everything and we can create something new from this. I wish we had maybe a little bit more with that, where I didn't get, maybe I'm misremembering, but I didn't get that there was enough conflict, or at least it didn't last very long, because then it's like, oh no, we're back to fighting, and we're fighting over the lightsaber, and the lightsaber gets broken.
Yeah, no, there's
So I
nothing
wish that
else
there was-
there. It was very quick.
Yeah, and that's the way I remember it. It was very quick, where I kind of feel like, not that you should really judge the trailers. I mean, the trailers are for marketing, but I sort of feel like, oh, maybe there should have been more conflict in her, because I don't understand how she left Luke not completely disillusioned. I mean, I get that she left to say, no, I can turn him back. And Kylo Ren did sort of turn back, and so I'm surprised she didn't kind of meet him maybe halfway. Like, I've sort of turned you from total evil, so maybe I'll turn away from total good. And so there was a little bit of payoff there that I was expecting, and I didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's sort of hard to, without like some more time and some more viewings, it's sort of hard to like really dissect that scene if it truly works or not. I mean, overall, like, this is like really where for the movie really picked up for me, starting with these few scenes here.
Yeah, no, I'll echo what you guys said. I think that this is some of the best stuff in the movie. I'll just make a quick couple of different comments here. Snoke looked much better here than he did in The Force Awakens. Really good effects. The circus did a good job. One thing that Rian Johnson is doing when he says, with the Luke line we've always been referring to here, is that this will be, it's not going to go the way you think. He's taking some risks here, some bold choices. This works very, very well. This is one of the few or only risks that may work for me, is that Kylo completes what Vader never did. Maybe because he either kept needing Palpatine or was afraid to because of his dependency on the suit. He was able to kill his master on his own, even though Rey was there as kind of a distraction, and accomplishes what Vader didn't do, as I mentioned. So I loved that idea. I think that's extremely well done. I agree with you, Andrew. I wanted to know more about Snoke, but because of this choice, I can let it go. I mean, yeah, I still want to know more about Snoke, but it really doesn't matter if this is where they went with it. I like it. I like the fight with the guards, as you guys mentioned. I think it was a good mix of the old prequel style and the new style with the choreographing and a little bit more, like, kind of like a little bit more of a martial artist knife fight kind of thing. I love the violent sound effects. They're very visceral, of the sabers cutting through that armor. Regarding the mystery box, yes, I don't credit JJ for anything here. I still think it's kind of funny, but I like the outcome, that she is a rando. Works for me. That's fine. I'm glad it's not a Kenobi. I think that would just end up being even more convoluted than we needed to get. So that's a good thing. The Skywalker lightsaber tug of war I thought was really, not necessary. It was kind of stupid. The only other thing I'd like to say is, why the fuck did Rey not kill Kylo when she woke up? She was not there. So she just buggered off. Little plot hole, but whatever. Let's move on. Finn and Rose's escape off Snoke's ship with BB-8, saving the day, and let's talk about Finn versus Phasma. I will go first. Garbage shit. Who wants to go next?
Garbage shit.
I was just scratching my head. All of this stuff is crap. The only thing I'll mention, the only nice thing about Phasma is I liked it when she whipped out that little pistol and she started shooting at Rose or somebody else. I thought that was kind of a little bit of a minor little nice thing, but overall, garbage shit. Nathan, please start us off for what your thoughts are.
I don't even want to talk about it. When Phasma showed up, I was like, oh, right. Totally forgot that Captain Phasma was a character in Star Wars. I was hugely disappointed that she shows up and then gets bested by the janitor. Come on. This is terrible. And then the fact that it was BB-8 operating the AT. I mean, this was like really like prequel era.
This is worse.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. This trumps prequel level stuff. The way the AT-ST falls apart on the top to reveal BB-8, like it just randomly falls apart just so we can see it's BB-8 then. Why not just cut inside and the audience knows it's BB-8?
Why wasn't it Rey?
Or Jar Jar?
Why wasn't it Rey?
It should have been Rey or something like that. I mean,
it should have been Rey.
With BB-8 maybe. It was ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I think I was more angry at Phasma's defeat by Finn.
And did you like the line? Oh, you're scum. No.
Oh.
Rebel scum.
Well, I kind of chuckled, but the delivery was wrong.
Yeah, it was just wrong.
Oh, okay, I kind of get what this is, but I mean, like, was this the first fucking take? Like, you can do better than this. There was also like weird, I felt like pacing for this when they're going to execute them. So like, no, that's not good enough or that's too quick or so. I was like, come on. Anyways, I think this is really not cool, like what they did with Phasma, because I think like you have like this really interesting idea of, I get it, they've got like, I can't remember if it was like a book or comic book, explain her back history, but you have like this cool looking character, and you have also a female character, because sometimes Star Wars doesn't always have the best rap with female characters and how they're treated sometimes. Just because you have Rey, it doesn't like
you got
the
Holdo, you got
Queen or anything
Leia,
like
you got
that.
Rose.
Oh boy, what are you talking about?
It's not the number, it's how they...
Anyways.
Well, this is not really about because she's female. It's just how they're used.
No, I get that. What I mean, though, is that, like, you do have there's not a ton of female characters that are the best portrayals in some of these movies. And so I thought that, okay, in Force Awakens, they didn't really capitalize on her that much. Like, okay, fine, whatever. But in this, I mean, I thought that, she would have maybe... They even said, like, oh yeah, she'll have like a bigger role and more to do. It's like she has less to do. And then she's kind of wiped out. I mean, like with allusions to Boba Fett in many ways, actually. All this just did not work for me at all, because this was all prequel era stuff kind of going on. I just didn't care.
I'd just like to add before, Andrew, you start, forget that even if it was a female inside, who it is, if it was just, say, some no-name actor playing Phasma, but you have Gwendolyn Christie here, and it's just such a waste. I just want to mention that. But anyways, Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, it's bad when Boba Fett has more character development than Phasma. I just don't get it. I had the same feelings, like, okay, like they talked about like Phasma wasn't given enough time in Force Awakens. We're going to give her more time to shine, and she gets her ass kicked. Like, I wasn't too opposed to the BB-8 scene as much, but it's another example of a scene that was thrown in for just maybe visual appeal. I don't know. But Finn beating Phasma, who's supposed to be probably the pinnacle of a trooper in these days, and he just got out of his back to tank or where the hell he's swimming in. So it's like, how the hell does this happen? The scenes with Finn, unfortunately, the action sequences are all reminiscent of the prequels, and I've been trying to shut those out for a long time, and it's good to see them get brought back up. Those are good memories that I shouldn't be repressing. So,
I mean, because Disney owns Lucasfilm and Marvel, you see the Bacta tank had the super soldier serum. So that's how Finn was able to take out Phasma so easily. That's what happened there. Yeah.
Now that you say that, so Finn's Captain America. So
exactly, it's corporate synergy that they're using there. So it's a good thing that they had access to the technology, because if Disney didn't own them, then Finn might be dead right now. So it's a good.
I now officially love this scene, and it is the best scene of the movie because we have the Captain America of the Star Wars universe.
So in Episode 9, are we going to get mutants?
Ooh.
Yeah, we might.
Are they going to be fighting Galactus?
No, Hugh Jackman will be back. It's his one last Wolverine movie.
Yeah, exactly. They'll have adamantium. The Jedi will have adamantium claws in Episode 9.
Oh boy.
All right, Geoff, please give us your thoughts if you have any here.
Well, it's more filler, so that's a problem for me. The fight itself between Finn and Captain Phasma was fine. I was fine with it. And BB-8 driving the AT-ST didn't bug me, but it did remind me of the hangar scene from Revenge of the Sith when R2 was taking out those battle droids. It was prequel-level hijinks here, and that bothered me.
It was worse. Anyways, that's better.
I mean, I need to see it again, but I don't think you're far off anyway, Harry, by saying that. So with our character of DJ Del Toro, there's some interesting things that they were trying to do, but they just give him some throwaway lines.
Yeah, you win today, you lose tomorrow. Chin up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like the line. It's like, they blow you up today, you'll blow them up tomorrow. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it.
Except you're now about to be executed.
Yeah, exactly. Except you're actually literally going to get blown up, so you can't be the one doing the blowing up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, that was kind of silly. I mean, the concept is neat to introduce to Star Wars, where maybe it's not so black and white. There are shades of gray.
It's ham-fisted, as you admit.
But it is ham-fisted, yeah. They don't treat it with any nuance.
No.
Did it before, too, when they stole the ship, right? And he's like, they were selling weapons to the bad guys and the good guys.
Yeah. I mean, that's great. I think that's something that should be explored in Star Wars.
Absolutely.
But there's no, as you said, it's just a throwaway line.
Yeah. So if they're not going to explore it, then don't bring it up. Like, I don't need you to bring up a good question. You don't need to answer good questions, but if you're going to ask good questions, you need to explore what the possible answers are going to be. And they don't do that. They're like, they stole weapons to the good guys and the bad guys. Well, they'll blow you up today, you'll blow up tomorrow. Bye, peace. And that's it. And I'm like, no, cut all that out. If you're just going to be ham-fisted, give me the ham fist with the good and the evil. Give me my red lightsaber and my blue, have them fight, and that's fine. And if you're going to try to do more than that, then fucking do more than that. But they kind of scratch the surface and they're like, ooh, look, there's more stuff underneath the surface. It's like, no, you just scratched it. You didn't do anything. And that's really frustrating to me because I thought that Rian Johnson was a more capable storyteller. So to do things like that really pissed me off, man. And you got Benicio del Toro, who rules in all of his bizarreness. He's
such a waste. Such a waste of a great actor. Oh,
Yeah.
man. You signed this guy up and this is what you get. Ah, boy.
Yeah, like he's kind of our Lando, I guess, of this trilogy. And Lando had tons to do, and Benicio didn't have anything to do, and it's a real shame. So it's an unfortunate conclusion to the Rose Finn. Well, I guess. So I was just going to say their mission comes to an end here.
And they didn't even accomplish anything.
Yeah, it was a total failure. And I was reading, I don't know if it was a review or an analysis I was reading the other day after I'd seen it, saying like, it was kind of neat to see, to have our heroes like go on a mission and fail at that mission. That was kind of neat. And I guess that would be fine. Like, I wouldn't mind seeing that. Like, well, oh, shit,
that would be
failed.
Interesting if that's the main thrust of the storyline.
No, it isn't. They didn't pull it off. It's filler. It's like, meh, it didn't work, didn't happen. And I mean, it didn't fucking matter because they didn't have enough fuel to jump to hyperspace anyway. So didn't fucking matter. And I really like Finn too. I like that character. Fuck, was I mad that he didn't get jack shit to do.
All right, let's talk about the last battle here, which is the Battle of Crate on the planet. Include everything all the way to the end of the movie. Let's just only hold off with Luke's final moments on Acto and that last shot of the movie with the Broom Boy there. Nathan, how about you start us off here?
When this sequence started, I started thinking, oh yeah, this was in the trailers. At this point, I'm like, well, the movie's over now, right? Because I feel like I've been sitting in the theater for like 5 hours at this point. There was something weird about this point where I'm like, oh yeah, the movie's over. So I did like, the idea that they left this part to the end, this final stand. Visually, I think there's a lot to like here. I liked some of the throwbacks to Empire with the way that the walkers actually moved. I mean, it's all CGI, I know, but they had a bit of a feel of stop motion a little bit, the way that they kind of, I'm trying to think the right word for it, but I mean, they were just a little bit stiff in a way. Also, I started liking the look of Kylo Ren, the way his face started having almost like this rock to it. The makeup there for him was really good as he's just like really embracing the dark side at this point. I mean, the overall battle was not maybe as good as it could have been. I mean, it's no Battle of Hoth, I suppose. And then there was that final scene with, well, not final, she didn't die, but with Rose. That's just something that kind of bugs me about the relationship between Finn and Rose, is that this is supposed to be a romantic relationship, supposedly, but I didn't really understand where any of it kind of came from. It was very much like episode 2 in a way, where not in like a creepy sexual predator way that it was in episode 2, but even though the two of them have chemistry, doesn't feel like a real romance. And so she confesses her love. It's like, well, where did that come from? I don't know. Maybe I was just tired. And I think that sort of that final battle between Kylo and Luke there. Oh, well, before that, there was a moment that I liked. I liked it. I could see it would bug people where, like, after Luke shows up in the Resistance base, but he's going to go out to meet the First Order army, and he looks over at 3PO and he just kind of winks. Doesn't say anything, just kind of goes on. I thought it was like a neat little moment. I could see people maybe not liking that. I was like, well, you have two iconic characters coming together again, and that's all you get. And like, I think it works for what we've established as how Luke is now. Thought it was fun. And then, there's like that moment of comedy. We haven't really talked that much about the comedy in this movie. We've kind of talked about hating some of the prequel era level shit, but there were other moments of comedy, especially from Luke, that really worked for me. But sometimes I don't know if it's Luke Skywalker or if it's just Mark Hamill. I did like it that we kind of brushed off a little bit of the dust after, supposedly getting shot at by the new walkers. A couple of weird moments here. Most of our main characters don't have anything to do anymore. And then the scene with the Falcon kind of coming in, it's like it was very obligatory to me. Even though like a lot of this did sort of work at the time when I was watching, it's like, oh, this is fun. This is, our crescendo to the movie. There's a kind of an emptiness to it for me. And that's just on one viewing. I may have a different opinion after I see it again. The other thing I felt was weird was Rey lifting up all the boulders. Again, this is a very different idea for Star Wars, that like she doesn't really have any training. She just has this innate power, which goes against all the canon that has been built up to this point, that you need to learn how to do these things. So, she's just so powerful. I guess she can can do this. I did sort of dislike that I don't know, I think maybe the characters just didn't have enough to sort of do here, and it was just a lot of cool visuals at this point. I did sort of like the idea of just they have like this Death Star cannon, I guess, although as to what exactly they use that for on a regular base, I don't know, like they just have that.
Why does Finn have to throw the line, well, it's really Rian Johnson throwing the line, that it's a Death Star mini cannon? Why can't it just be a fucking cannon? It was already a joke to begin with.
It also feels like it's actually not big enough to be a Death Star cannon.
It's a miniaturized
Well, it was
version
Death
of it.
Star tech. Yeah, it was miniaturized version.
It's a weird shout out, I suppose, which it's pointless.
It's a running gag that a lot of people don't like, and I agree with. I don't know. The writers, I guess, just say we're going to continue using it. I don't know.
What's even the gag of it, though? That's my problem with it.
They're trying to emphasize power, but I don't think they need to do that by saying Death Star. It's a Death Star cannon. Like,
We got Death
just
Star.
say it's
We got Death Star.
super powerful.
No, but you're right. But Harry, you're right. It's like, why isn't it just a cannon?
Yeah.
It's kind of like a bunker buster, not a bomb, but a bunker buster laser at this point. But I mean, it's just a shout out, and I thought, well, like, what? It's way too small. Yeah, it's supposed to be miniaturized or whatever, but I mean, it doesn't mean anything. But anyways, I thought, exciting action sequences. I liked the look of the planet, but I don't know. I'd have to see it again, but ultimately we kind of have just the ending of our movie here that didn't land as much as I wanted it to.
Any other comments? Because this is your chance to really talk about Luke's force projection and his actual, disappearance. We'll talk about in a second. But was this a fan?
Oh, I thought you wanted to save that part.
No. Let's talk about his force projection power and his confrontation with Kylo Ren.
Oh man, it's kind of hard to. I'm having trouble remembering some of their conversation, I guess. But when Luke showed up, I knew that there was something up because he looked different immediately.
Yeah, he looked younger, right? He looked
younger.
Hair wasn't gray and had different clothes.
His hair was his beard was colored and his hair is short.
Yeah. I've read that people noticed that when he walked on the sand,
they made a note of that when Kylo dragged his feet in the sand. It made
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I didn't really catch that when I watched it. It was only after I'd read about it. Again, this was subverting all expectations. Now it's like, oh yeah, okay, we're gonna get a huge lightsaber battle now, and we don't kind of get that. I don't know. I'm having trouble dissecting this particular moment. I need to see the movie again, but I felt like it was an interesting way to have two Force users have a lightsaber battle without ever crossing a lightsaber against each other. And I thought that, they were playing with some expectations of what would happen when Kylo Ren cuts down Luke Skywalker. And I thought that they were playing with some ideas here, and I don't know, I need more time to actually process it. I'm kind of curious to know what you guys think of it.
Andrew.
I wish they did more of this sequence than they did the space battle. The scene between Rose and Finn after she takes him out when he's trying to sacrifice himself to take out the Death Star cannon. Sorry, Death Star cannon. I'm just going to say Death Star over and over and over again.
No, it's appropriate. It's Death Star.
That sequence I was watching it. I'm like, where are the stormtroopers? They're just having this moment in front of this giant cannon with a bunch of walkers around them. There's not a single stormtrooper around hey, we'll just capture these people who just try to destroy our cannon. It felt
exactly.
weird.
Why didn't the walkers just turn their cannons onto them as they're just having their moment?
Or midway through, but one just stomps on them. And her kissing him, that to me, I didn't see any of the romantic element of it throughout their entire arc through the movie. And so when she kissed him, is that just a fanboy kissing a hero? I was puzzled by it. It just didn't make much sense. But the sequences on the planet I enjoyed, but when Nathan started off his comments, or when he was saying it's just oh, I forgot about this sequence. Oh yeah, we still have to fly around on these things that kick up red sand. Oh gosh, this movie just needs to end. It had been drawn out for that long. But then when Luke showed up, I really enjoyed the sequences with Luke and Kylo. You really sense the anger with Kylo and Luke. You knew that there was something up, but I didn't quite expect that. And I was just bracing myself for the moment where Kylo would kill Luke. And when he didn't, I was like, oh, thank goodness. And then I realized, oh, this is still not good anyways. I liked it, but it felt rushed and placed versus really developed like it should have been. Instead, you get a space battle that lasts half the movie that should have ended 10 minutes into it. So it had me wanting more, but unfortunately, we didn't get it.
Geoff, yourself.
More or less, this all worked for me. It looked great. The design of the Resistance ships was cool and different. I know they kind of want it to seem hopeless, but I think they said they had 13 fighters. It's like, why did you even fucking bother? For a minute there, I thought Finn was going to bite it because Ryan Johnson had been throwing out so many other things. I was like, oh, shit. So when Rose came in to save him, that was a decent moment for her character, which had been useless to this point. I didn't feel the chemistry, the romantic chemistry with the kiss. I thought the two had decent chemistry otherwise, but there wasn't any romance there for me. So I thought it might have been like platonic kiss. We'll see what happens. But she did say something that I wish they had introduced at the start of the movie, and I thought is really important for Star Wars and resonated with me. And that was her line that was, we're not going to win by destroying the things we hate. We're going to win by saving the things that we love. I thought that was an excellent line and an excellent idea, and I thought it played well, and I just wish it had been early in the movie because I think that's worth exploring, and I hope they pick that thread up because it's sort of the same as Poe's story in this movie. It's like, we're not going to win just by blowing shit up. We have to, right? That's not what this is about. That sort of thing gives a little more emotional weight to these grand battles. And I think that's really important to make those battles feel like something more than CG ships shooting at other CG walkers. When the Millennium Falcon came in, I thought that was a fine moment. When Luke came in, so I like the part where it's a small moment where he gives Leia the gold dice from the Millennium Falcon cockpit, the dashboard, Han Solo's dashboard. Neat little moment, small bit there because those dice are only glimpsed very, very briefly previous to this. So that was cool. I was wondering what the fuck was going on. If there was some continuity error they didn't catch where his hair was short and his beard wasn't gray and he had his old lightsaber. Like, what the fuck is going on? It doesn't make any sense. He's got the wrong lightsaber. What's going on? I feel stupid now for not seeing what was going on. We get another expression of what you can do with the Force, another Force power. So that was cool. And yeah, I mean, Nathan mentioned the makeup on Adam Driver's face there behind his scar, and his face just kind of kept getting more messed up and gnarled, and that was a really neat expression to just show where he's going with that. So that worked great. And I thought Rey's rescue of them there at the end, call back to Luke's line where he's like, it's not, the Force is just about lifting rocks. He's like, oh, lifting rocks. Like, she lifts all the rocks. So that was, I know she hasn't really had much training, and I guess we're just going to have to forgive it for that. Luke never really had much training either, so I can kind of buy that. So I thought that was fine. I thought the conclusion was good. I thought it was strong enough to close it out. Again, Rose, but other than that, I liked when they shot all of the lasers in the universe that Luke, and he just brushes the shoulder off and he's not actually there, but that was cool. Good characterization of Luke Skywalker there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys for the most part. I mean, Nathan, I feel I'm with you on this one. I feel a little bit empty in all of these scenes because none of this was necessary. I felt that after Snoke's ship was destroyed and everybody has escaped, that kind of felt like a more natural way to end the movie, but here we have Crate. I do love the aesthetics of the planet and the red salt and the pod racing ships going out there. We got some good aerial shots, which Ryan Johnson, is kind of the first time I really noticed anything worthwhile in the cinematography department. Reminded me of the pod race and some of George Lucas's techniques there, so I did appreciate that. Really not sure what the point of all the ships going out to fight the walkers, what they were doing, because they just raced out there, were getting shot up and torn apart, and then they said, oh shit, well, let's turn around. I mean, I know Finn was willing to sacrifice himself at the end moments there and is saved by Rose, but what really was the plan from Poe? Because I'm not sure if those things actually were firing anything, but anyways, whatever. Yeah, the Rose Finn stuff, just shoehorned romance. I mean, Geoff, that's fine if you enjoyed that line. Throwaway line for me about, we'll save the stuff we love, and then he gives her a kiss, and then she kind of does her traditional faint, and I think that was pretty shitty, in my opinion. Why didn't the First Order just blow him away at that point? I have no idea, but yeah, it's a movie, we gotta let things go. Chewie and Rey flying in with the Falcon is cool. Again, noticing much about the score, but I did appreciate the TIE Fighter music from Episode 4 playing again here, even though it's a repeat from old tracks. For some reason, it just felt right and I enjoyed it. However, I felt that Kylo Ren was just a little too much out of control. I want that ship destroyed. He was getting a bit too cartoonish or buffoonish for my taste, especially after the arc he just went through. He just kind of went back to his old self there, so I thought that was a little too much for me. Again, too much about the ham-fisting about, sparks. They say, well, all the spark is lost. Now and then Leia has a couple moments and a couple of beats. I'm losing, we've lost the spark of hope. We fought till the end. And then Luke shows up. I get what they're saying here, but for the love of God, what about all the sacrifices from all the other soldiers and what they've been going through these past two movies? Is that not enough of a spark for all these people to keep fighting? I'm happy that Luke is there to provide that spark for these people. But I don't like this theme. But I did enjoy Mark and Carrie having their scene together. It's a nice little reunion for Luke and Leia. It worked. Shame they have nothing else. It just feels like a waste. And, Nathan, I'm one of those guys that count me in the camp that I didn't like the only I get a wink to 3PO. I need more there. I'm sorry. I waited this long. Give me something,
I would be curious to know actually what would you have liked to actually see there?
I think at this point, have 3PO go with R2-D2 to Acto, along with Rey and Chewie. Get those moments done there. Because what the fuck did 3PO provide at all through the rest of the movie?
You're definitely right there. It would have been better if, he'd gone to Acto as well. But because of the way the movie played out, I think that the wink worked better than him actually having any dialogue, the way the movie is currently constructed. But you're right. I think it would have been better the other way, where he...
Yeah, that would have been a good idea. Have them both, have R2 and 3PO together. Because you get R2 and 3PO together.
Yeah, that's never going to happen again. But anyways, I'll finish my thoughts so we can, get through this a little bit more quickly. Luke versus Kylo was unfortunately a little bit of a disappointment for me. I love the concept and the final resolution and twist that it's a force projection and he's really not there. What really pissed me off was that it was staged so poorly from Rian Johnson. Luke is just has this one kind of stance. It's like I paused my video game and, he's kind of bent over slightly, like a little bit forward with his lightsaber and he's not moving. Oh, but then they switch spots and he's in the exact same position. It's kind of like, I'm just leaving my character there in a video game just kind of still and I'm not moving.
That was his stance, though, that was Luke's stance from Empire and Jedi.
Great. I need more, man. It was stupid. Didn't work.
Did you see the Darth Maul Obi-Wan duel from Star Wars Rebels?
Yeah, it was shitty too, but whatever.
Well, it kind of reminded me of that. And at first I was taken aback by how short it was, but then when you get the backstory, I felt it was appropriate for Luke's I'm just tired and a curmudgeon and I'm just trying to delay him. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Well, I understand what's going on. He's there as a distraction so everyone can escape. That's great. But I needed something else. Regarding of what Luke actually did. This is, the hero of the original trilogy. I know it's not a story anymore. You're getting rid of him. Give me a little bit more. I needed something here, guys. I'll be honest with you. This did not work. It was not enough, but that's just me. I also want to make one last point here. Essentially, at the end of this, with respect to the Resistance and the First Order, are we not essentially starting from scratch again? Just like what Episode 7 did? We just reduced the numbers down even further, and it's again another soft reboot. Episode 7 did a soft reboot. I'm destroying all the Resistance fleet from the Starkiller base, destroying all those other planets. Now I'm doing the same thing again, just on a smaller scale. It's kind of like what I felt. So let's move on. Let's finish off with Luke's final moments on Acto and that last shot of the movie with Broom Boy.
Okay, well, I'll talk about Broom Boy first. I didn't care for this closing. It felt like more it was played for a laugh when he force pulls the broom. He's looking up for the stars and he's got resistance ring, guess that Rose had. The concept here is fine. The force is out there and the people who can use it are out there. It's fine. It just sounds like it's more trouble than it's worth, though, considering what's happened to this galaxy with force users. It was sort of an echo of an earlier concept that went nowhere that I found was just, I don't know what the right word is for it, but they kept referring to their allies in the Outer Rim. Who are your allies in the Outer Rim? It just brought up more questions to me again about what the hell is the political situation in this galaxy right now? Who are the First Order? Who is the Resistance? I know there's some books that explain some of this, but from what I understand, they don't really explain all of it. So is it just that there is no galactic government and everybody's on their own? Because if that's the case, that's fine. That's okay. But I just want to know who's what and how big is everything? How big is the First Order? Is this the entire First Order fleet here and they're actually not that big, much of a threat? Is this the entire Resistance? Because I got the impression that this kid force pulling this broom is the sign that this is bubbling under the surface right now. Everybody who wants to rise up against their oppressors. But how many oppressors are there? Again, it goes back to that message. Rich people are bad, animals good. Who's rising up against what here? Is there some kind of overarching evil in this galaxy that needs to be risen up against? Or is it just contained in this First Order? Are there other pockets? I'm just confused at this point. And I get questions that I don't think I'm going to get answers to because they don't seem to give a shit about it. They just sort of look at this shiny thing. And there's depth here, just don't look too closely at it. So that's frustrating for me. So I didn't really dig that ending because it just frustrated me more with more of those questions. I like questions. Questions are good, but they're not going to get answered. That makes me angry. I'm not going to go read the books. They're not good. The books I've read reviews of these books. They're not good. They're just hastily put together, it's a cash grab. And I'm sorry to be so cynical on it. I don't mind.
Well, it is. You have a book about Captain Phasma. Not that I've read it, but that he's in the movie for 2 seconds.
Yeah, I read some of the Star Wars extended universe novels, like the Timothy Zahn trilogy. And that's all a cash grab too, but I think they were good. But you didn't need to read those to understand the meaning of the last scene of The Empire Strikes Back. You know what I mean? They were separate things. And that's what I prefer, is that the movies are contained. They should. I think the filmmakers want them to be, but they're asking too many questions that aren't going to get answered. That pisses me off. So let's go back to Luke. I was sad to see him go. I thought he'd make it through this. I thought he'd be in the next one. Well, I assume he'd be in the next one as a Force ghost. But it was an all right way to go. The vision of the twin suns in the sky calling back to A New Hope was a poignant moment for me. And I thought Mark Hamill did a bang-up job start to finish in the film here in the final scene where he fades away. It was good. I thought it was poignant. I thought it was filmed well. It was sad. And from a meta perspective, I just hope his sacrifice wasn't for nothing.
Yeah, I'm just glad he didn't keel over, and as he was keeling over, it was like, it was fun, or like fell off a bridge or something like that. It was tough to see because like we all love Luke. I'm watching this like, please don't let it happen. Please don't let it happen. Then you watch it, like it makes more sense. I'm glad it wasn't Kylo who killed him. I'm glad it was like him saving his friends and delaying things. But Geoff, I think, put it really well. It's like, we shouldn't have to go to other forms of media to find the answers to what should be provided within the movie. And that was part of the conversation I had after the movie. And we're talking about it. And I'm trying to like put all of these different like sources together about like, well, this comes from like Star Wars Rebels. And I think this had some element in Clone Wars. And I think there's something in a comic book. And it's like, no, we should be able to just look at it as a movie and get the answers there. Like there shouldn't be such ambiguity. And the scene with the kids, like I don't mind it, but it shouldn't be at the end of the movie. Like you could have had that earlier as they're escaping. It felt like a throwaway. Like that being said, like I did like the Luke sequence. I did like seeing a throwback to the two sons. And it was a good way, unfortunately, for Luke to move on. And certainly we hope to see him in the next one. But the ending is like I feel like they're like, by the way, it's not a trilogy. There's going to be 4 movies. Because this feels like the beginning of another trilogy. It just doesn't feel like the middle part of the 3D movie arc. I just sat there after the movie ended. I'm like, I'm not sure how to feel about this. It didn't feel right at the end of it.
You know, when I saw Broom Boy pull the broom towards him, I thought, I was like, wait, did he just use the force? And I thought, no, I just must be tired or something, because it struck me as odd. And it was the next day that I looked at it, I was like, oh, no, that I wasn't imagining it. He really did. And when he had the ring, I had totally forgot. I don't even really remember him getting that ring.
Rose gives it to him when they get into
because she had that whole monologue about how she grew up and stuff like that. That's where it's all from, right?
To be honest, I tuned myself out during those scenes. So
yeah, anyways, like again, there was some of that idea of Force users and being special. Like you don't have to be part of a bloodline in order to be special. It can kind of be anyone, which is an interesting idea for Star Wars, I think. Briefly, before I get into what happens to Luke, I've actually listened to some of the books, now canon books on tape, and they do have some explanations of what the First Order is. And it's like a lot of political machinations of, you know, the Imperials kind of went away, but then some who were sort of still part of the New Republic and broke. I mean, it's just all a bunch of really boring nonsense. And you're right, like the books are not really that good. The only thing that was actually kind of cool about it was when Leia was outed as the daughter of Darth Vader, because they kind of did that to kind of undercut her political influence and stuff like that. Anyway. With the death of Luke, I felt it was sort of appropriate in a way because, I mean, obviously he had expended so much energy. It kind of did him. It was sort of weird, though, because it almost like wasn't like a true death in a way. It's not like he just keeled over. It's like he had given himself over to the Force so much. He just sort of became one with the Force, as opposed to what had happened to Yoda, who really just died of old age. I think what had happened with Luke is that he had, at least in the way I worked it out, was that he just melded with the Force. And I thought it was an interesting choice, given that originally they said that General Leia was going to still have a role to play in Episode 9. Now that's not going to happen. And so I was sort of surprised that they said, okay, we're letting Luke go, because there's no guarantee that he's going to come back. Also, if he does come back, there's also no guarantee that he's going to appear to Rey. He may be there to force haunt Kylo Ren. I think he kind of alluded to that a little bit, if I'm not mistaken. And so I think that's an interesting reversal right there. Also, because Yoda was able to use Force lightning on that tree at the Jedi Temple. It's not like the original trilogy where, Force ghosts don't really, they just sort of appear, they walk, you can talk with them or whatever, but they don't really do anything. And I think that may change going forward. But I think maybe an appropriate end given what we were given in this movie. I wish we'd had more, and then he just sort of continues on. But I think what the type of story that this movie was giving us was that we're tearing down the old world and you have to let that go. And so in sort of a weird way, Luke's death is appropriate for what the movie is trying to give us. Take it or leave it, I think kind of the statement of the movie in a weird way.
I think it's very clear that they're saying this is the end and Luke's journey is now complete. Rian Johnson has gone on record since the movie has been released saying Luke's journey ended in Return of the Jedi. He's just here to give Rey a couple of pieces of advice. So whether he appears or not in episode 9, we can discuss shortly. I'll just talk about these scenes here. The actual moment of him dying, loved it because it is poignant. It was the word I had written down, Geoff. It is beautiful. It's how I kind of fantasized him going out as well. Like he wouldn't have been just killed by some, no-name, pussy. It happened by, he died of old age or he died peacefully, which is what Rey said. He was in peace, which is fine for the moment. But the only question I have here is, is Luke spent? Or, as he had said before, he went to that island to die. He gets up, looks at the sun, and he says, does he pull a Padme and gives up on the will to live here? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that's what the intent is, but it is slightly ambiguous. So I'll just mention that I'm not a fan of Luke's journey in this movie, and we'll talk about it in the arc, but I do love this moment here. Regarding Broom Boy, the way I have interpreted here, guys, is that, and we had those couple of scenes right before Broom Boy at the end looking at the stars, is that there was another boy talking in another language with a kind of like a self-made action figure, and he was telling the tale of Luke Skywalker. So it kind of looks like this is just Luke inspiring the tall tale of Luke Skywalker, like he'll now be a legend again to inspire new heroes. So I like that shot, but the only thing is, and I think Andrew, you had mentioned this, kind of felt like this moment should have been saved for episode 9. Not just Luke's death, but this actual shot could have been a very perfect shot of the end of the trilogy and would have signified Rey going on to teach new generation of heroes or Jedi or whatever. But I didn't necessarily like it here. I appreciate it here. I think it would have been better served for episode 9. So gentlemen, that's the story. Let's go through as quickly as we can. Let's go through the characters and their arcs. Start with Rey and Kylo Ren. Andrew, why don't you start us off here?
I certainly thought the acting was great for Rey and Kylo, and Daisy Ridley really came into her own for this one. I thought her acting was good in Force Awakens. I really liked Adam Driver's performance in this one as well. What I would have liked to have seen more of Rey is that, Luke was talking about how, she didn't even turn away from the dark side. She didn't resist, but there didn't ever seem to be a point where I felt like she was embracing it even slightly. There wasn't enough of a conflict in her. She seems, I think one podcast put it best, was she seems too perfect in that regards, and that conflict that Luke freaks out about, or that strength. He shouldn't be freaked out if she's super good, but here she is. It was an interesting side development that I didn't find that really played out well. Kylo Ren, I like the tease about whether or not he was going to go good, especially given that earlier sequence when he's about to shoot out the bridge and he doesn't do it. I honestly thought that he was actually going to rescue his mom in space when I saw those lights. But I liked it. And now there's this intense hatred that you can sense from Kylo Ren. He's completely gone. While Rey, I just don't know where she's going. Is she going to take the books because you see the books at the end? Or is she going to come up with her own way and interpretation of the Force? So I like the end-to-end. Definitely, I think my two favorite characters from the new trilogy so far. I think the actors have really handled the roles well. So I was really happy with the performance.
Nathan?
I mean, overall, I think it kind of worked, but there were maybe a few letdowns. I think they sort of teased this idea of, and Andrew brought it up, of there are things, they directly say it in the movie too, is, Rey, there are things that she can learn from the dark side. I don't think there was enough payoff there. Kylo Ren, there was still a little bit of that struggle with maybe the light side a bit, but maybe not enough payoff for me. And then we sort of went with, I guess, maybe a little bit more traditional roles of good and bad. Yeah, absolutely. The acting from both of them, I think, serves the movie really well. But for a movie that takes a ton of risks, their arcs weren't maybe risky enough, which is sort of a strange thing to say. maybe some more examination might, I don't know, reveal a bit more nuance there. But that was my initial feeling for such a risky movie, that they sort of teased a few things that were different, but ultimately really stayed the course.
Mm-hmm. Okay, how about yourself, Geoff? Let's talk about these characters quickly, their arcs.
Yeah, sure. Performances were very good. Rey's arc wasn't great. She didn't seem to progress all that much. She learned a little bit more about the Force. Again, I wanted to know more about the Jedi and their history and the mythology there. I thought that was going to kind of come through Luke's teachings to her, and that didn't really happen. So her arc it just not enough. And I really like her. I like that character. I know, Harry, you're not a huge fan, and I've heard some other criticism, but I really enjoy her character. So I wish she had progressed a little bit more. So that's too bad. Kylo, Ben Solo, great arc. I thought that was the best part of the movie. I thought he had the most to do. His ascension from henchman to emperor or supreme leader or whatever.
No. Remperor,
yeah. Yeah. You coined a new term, Harry, and that was one of the best ones you've done. Yeah, the Remperor was good because he did, as you said before, like he did or somebody said he did what Darth Vader couldn't, which goes way back to even a line that was in the trailer for The Force Awakens. I will finish what you started. And he was able to break free. So now he's the big bad. And we'll see what happens. People have been talking about it and, like the redemption arc, and then he's going to be, if he's going to turn. Guys, I hate to tell you this. Whoever's listening to this, there's no happy ending for Kylo Ren in this trilogy.
No.
He has killed way too many people. He is way too evil. He does not ride off into the sunset.
No. Everyone's written him off also, and that was part of the arc here. Rey thought she knew better than everybody, and she was wrong. Kylo made his choice, and I think that's clearly what the filmmakers are saying. It's just Rey versus Kylo to the death in Episode 9.
Maybe so. But I'm all right with him embracing the darks. Like Anakin came back, and that was great. But Ben Solo's not coming back, and I'm all right. I actually kind of like how he embraces the dark side more and more and more as the film goes on, and I think that works beautifully. I think there's going to be a little bit more nuance there as we explore the conclusion to his arc in Episode 9. But his arc worked really well. It was the thing that worked best in this film.
Okay, so yes, I agree, Geoff. The stuff with Kylo Ren is the best thing in the movie. Driver's performance is amazing. Daisy Ridley, again, does an excellent job in the acting department as Rey. I love the twist here to seal his fate, as we mentioned and talked about, accomplishing what Vader did not. That is the one great risk of the movie that Rian Johnson did, and that meant the demise of Snoke before many thought he would go, and I can accept that because this works. Something different, and that's a great choice. It's still a little bit too out of control for my tastes, but I guess that's part of the character. This is Kylo Ren, especially at the end screaming no, and, I want to destroy the Millennium Falcon at all costs and all that stuff, but it's okay. Rey, Geoff, her arc here was not the greatest. She does a great job. I want this character to be more fleshed out than she is because she's just not interesting enough to me. She asks all the right questions, and she's trying to do the right thing. These are all good things we need from our protagonist. I'm with her. Problem is, she is too perfect, as you mentioned, Andrew, was my complaint before. And what disappoints me even more, and this is not Rey's fault, really. Luke, we can talk about it. What did Luke teach her? I'm still not even sure. But outside of any of this stuff, there's not that much compelling about her. It's great that she came from nobody. I like that aspect of it. So let's move on to our favorite characters of the movie, Finn and Rose. Geoff, I'll give you the honor.
Well, I think I summed it up. I really like Finn and John Boyega, and that's why I'm so angry that they did nothing with him. It was so frustrating to watch him just not get his due and such a throwaway storyline. It was such a shame. I was aggravated. And Rose was just kind of meh for me, she's fine. But there are other characters, including Finn, who are underserved. Make sure your main characters get their due first, and then if you need other characters to help that along, fine, you can build them into the story. But there wasn't any reason for her. Shouldn't have been in the movie. I'm sorry, this isn't a white guy saying anything diversity or nothing like that. I'm all bring in everybody and of all types and all that, but let's have our heroes get their due first before we start wasting screen time with characters that don't do anything.
I too really like Finn. I think Boyega is a very charismatic actor. Who's the actress that plays Rose?
Kelly Marie Tran.
Thank you. I think she's a very new actress, and I think she did a really good job with what she was given. But I think that the problem with these characters is not these actors. I think it's actually the director not caring, because nothing they do is truly of any consequence. The romance didn't hit for me. It's a good idea to introduce new characters. I mean, that's happened before in Star Wars, but the script does not serve these characters at all. There probably is maybe a way that they could have made these characters and their whole arc work. They don't even really have an arc. They just have this mission, and like I said before, it's this weird video game mission where they have to go do this thing in order to unlock this other thing and find this thing. And so there's no arc. They're just doing stuff in this movie. And then that's why the turn at the end, her confession of love, it's really empty. I suspect that Rose will come back for episode 9, and I really hope that these two characters actually have more to do. It's a really bland set of circumstances that these characters have to go through for this whole movie.
Andrew.
Yeah, I feel bad because this is unfortunate. I have to take off. This is going to be my last character evaluation. The characters that disappointed me the most, because I like the introduction of Rose. I like the character. I like where she could potentially go with it. I don't think they utilized her as best as they possibly could. I think I heard another podcast talk about like perhaps she could have been the hacker that was able to disable the tracker. But yes. Finn, I thought that would have been a brilliant suggestion. But Finn, there were so many questions after the end of Force Awakens that I was excited to see where they took Finn. I don't think he went anywhere. I just don't see any type of development that I'm really interested in. And so that's where it's like I was disappointed because they're both fantastic actors. And to see them get thrown away, unfortunately, like this in just a story arc that for me didn't really have a place or wasn't necessary, it was disappointing. So I hope they come back with something, but there's just nothing. There's no buildup anymore. Like with Finn, I was excited to see where he went. And then 10 minutes into it, I'm like, I don't think this is going to go anywhere. So yeah, unfortunately it. But I hate to do this to you guys, but I do need to unfortunately jet. I appreciate being included in the podcast, but it has absolutely been fun. I can't wait to see what new insights I get from seeing it on Friday. But I wanted to thank you guys for this.
Oh, no problem, Andrew. How about just then before you go, just give us your final thoughts very quickly. Would you recommend this movie? What's your ranking?
Sorry to interrupt the flow. For me, the ranking is like, of course, the original trilogies. It's Empire, Return, then A New Hope for me. I'd actually slot this in before Force Awakens. What I really appreciate about this more than Force Awakens is that they tried to do something new. It's something different. It's something off the wall. It's something that is not the formulaic Star Wars that seemed to be in place with Episode 7 and throughout the prequels. So the prequels, it's like Revenge of the Sith, and then if you could put Episode 1 and 2 at the very bottom of the barrel, like 10 feet down, I would certainly do that. But while there's a lot of flaws and there's a lot of questions, I would have liked to have seen this as Episode 7, because it's like, okay, yeah, I'm able to forgive some of this stuff, but it's something radically new. And now we're in uncharted territory, which is what I wanted to see from the start of this trilogy to begin with. And so now it's like, I don't know what to expect versus Force Awakens, which is like, okay, I've seen this before. So I definitely would recommend it. I think it's one of those where sometimes you have to put practicality aside and just enjoy it for a popcorn flick. I think it has hope for the next one, and that's where it's like secretly I want them to have a fourth. It's going to be a money grabber, but I like that they went something new. And that's, I think, what we needed from A Force Awakens that we didn't get. So I want to see it again before giving like final verdict. Throughout all the gripes, there was a lot of great things. Like I just loved how well this was shot. Like it was a beautifully directed movie that's visually stunning. That alone, like I recommended it. But yeah, no, I'm still, I think, in a little bit of digestion in terms of like what I actually think about it. So we'll see when the next Star Wars podcast pops up. I can give some recap about what I thought.
Well, sounds good. Thank you so much, Andrew. We appreciate it.
No, thanks, guys. Sorry to jet, but have a great rest of the time, and I can't wait to listen to it.
All right, see you, Andrew.
Take care, guys.
I'll quickly chime in on Finn and Rose. Garbage shit.
More garbage shit.
Yeah.
Who throws their shit in the garbage, Harry? That's what I want to know.
That's what I want to know.
I can introduce you to some people.
I agree with all of you have said. I love John Boyega. Very charismatic. Great. He needed something more here. Didn't get it. I like Kelly Marie Tran and what she brought to the table, but wasn't written good enough. And as we have talked about, when you have so many other characters that already need additional screen time, we don't need new characters coming in. This is just beyond TNG level, movie level territory, and it is not acceptable. I mean, the tracking storyline went nowhere, and they still ran out of fuel and went to crate anyway, so dumb. So let's talk about Poe, Leia, and Holdo.
I don't know. I have some real mixed feelings on this because I guess in the end, I sort of understood some of what Holdo was trying to impart onto Poe. I really liked a lot of the interactions between Poe and Leia. But again, it's a little bit muddled because the movie is trying to do a lot of different things and have a lot of different messages. And so I feel like I think Holdo is the one that I find maybe not the most disappointing, but really perplexing because they try and introduce like this potentially like murky character, but she's actually not that whatsoever. I get with Carrie Fisher and like she's not going to be in the movie a ton, and so she doesn't have that much of an arc necessarily other than to, okay, this is what we're doing, then kind of shows up at the end and says, hey, Poe, you're an idiot. You should have just listened to Holdo to begin with. So there was no real character development here at all. And I think Poe's character development was, again, like I guess in the end you learned, like a good TV movie lesson about respecting the chain of command. Maybe that's what's going on here. I don't know.
I'm not even sure if that's the case because he was still pretty gung-ho at the end of the movie anyways.
Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good point. So I don't know. I mean, they're all just in scenes. They're all just scenes that happen in the movie. And then we have another scene where I guess the story is moving along. So a little bit of a disappointment for me that, we have great actors, potentially interesting characters, and really it's of no consequence. Well, maybe not of no consequence, but not a sophisticated arc here at all. They're just in scenes.
Geoff, how about you chime in?
Yeah, more filler here. I mean, Leia doesn't have much of an arc, although she's good. I think Carrie Fisher was good, and her character, like Leia, was utilized well enough. Sure, they could have given her more to do, but they are sort of trying to pass the torch on a bit here. So I thought she was fine. Holdo, she was good. She was good. And that's kind of it. I'm actually not a big fan of Laura Dern, but she was perfectly good in this role here. And Poe was a little hot-headed. I mean, I didn't get this impression from him in the first one that he was so brash. So it was a bit of a turn. Like, again, as I said way back, like they're just kind of manufacturing some conflict here to fill things out while Rey gets her non-lessons in the Force. I mean, it's better than the Rose and Finn arcs, but not by a whole heck of a lot. There's not a lot going on here.
I'll start with Poe. I mean, I love Oscar Isaac. I just wish he was given something more worthy to do in these two movies. I know it was kind of a last-minute change up there for JJ. He didn't initially intend him to have a big part in Force Awakens, so I'll let that go. What's not acceptable is he's just given almost next to nothing to do here. The mutiny storyline was terrible. I mean, I really don't know. You mentioned, Geoff, that the lesson is, learn not to, there's better ways than just blow things up, because that's pretty much all he is wanting to do. I mean, he even has those throwaway lines, permission to blow stuff up and all these kind of things. So, I mean, that's something worth sort of exploring, but it's all without nuance, as we've talked about. So it's not enough for me with that character. Holdo, I liked quite a bit. Even though, again, going back to the same problem, we already have other characters that exist. Do we really need new ones? We talked about, is this something that Admiral Akbar could have sacrificed himself? Do we really need Holdo here? Or even Leia. Maybe this was Leia's moment to sacrifice herself and really save everybody on Snoke's ship from certain death. And that would have been interesting. I mean, I think I could have accepted that. That would have been really sad. We always talk about, Captain Kirk went out in a bad way. He didn't die on the bridge of his ship. I mean, General Leia is on her ship. I mean, Holdo here was on her ship. She went out in a blaze of glory and did the right thing. And she provided that spark that, was supposed to inspire all the rest of the resistance. And, tales should be, sung of her. She should have her own action figure. So I thought this could have been something worthy to give to Leia at this point, especially because later they throw away a line, and I want to talk about this. She has admitted to Luke, here, I give up on my son. And I want to talk about this. So both Luke and Leia, despite them knowing their technically more evil father, Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, he was able to be redeemed. Now I know through the Force and through his previous actions here, Kylo Ren seems irredeemable. And I know from a story perspective, That's where Lucasfilm is leading us to. He's not going to be redeemed. But from a mother's perspective, is that acceptable? We talked about this in our prequel trilogy. We were upset that Padme, despite her giving fucking birth just there, twin, that should be enough to sustain you. Is this okay for Leia to say, fuck him, I'm spent?
It's a worthy question that you ask.
I mean, this is a problem. At what point do you give up on your kids? I mean, that's a great question.
I don't know. Yeah, it is a good question. I guess the point that they become mass murdering space wizards might be the point where you
Vader was a mass murdering space wizard. He did even more harm than Kylo did. And still, in my opinion.
Well, he had a much longer career than Kylo.
But that's my point.
Well, the thing is, though, is some of us were bemoaning the perceived perfection of Rey. Leia's not perfect. Like, maybe she just couldn't handle, like, her father was evil, and okay, so we came back at the very, very end, but maybe it was just too much for her to have her own son kind of go down the same path. It was too much for her. I mean, she admitted it, right? Like, I gave up on him. Is it okay for her to do it? I guess no, it's not okay for her to do it. But is it okay from a story perspective to have that character do it? Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting thing to do, because then now we're, as the audience, we're like, oh man, that's a tough thing for her to say. But we're wrestling with it. That's a wrinkle to give Leia. That's good. Like, that's a good wrinkle to give her. I get it. It's not that she wanted to give up on him, and she just couldn't do it. It was the same with Luke. Like, a moment of weakness. He didn't give up on him, but he almost did. Like, there was that moment there. Like, it's not like he had the thought and is like, he went to the kid's room while he was sleeping, took out his lightsaber, lit it up, and then backed off from it. So considering all of the evil that they saw and all that they went through, and to see it slip back to darkness so quickly, just with the next generation, with their own family. Yeah, I get it.
Nathan.
Well, I think it's a tough thing to answer because we don't get a lot of the backstory of what Kylo or Ben Solo's fall actually was. So, she says, yeah, I gave up, but there's not a lot of context there. We don't have a lot of the history of what happened. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting question for sure. And it's also a weird one to put in the middle of the trilogy as opposed to maybe something at the end, although I think it goes to the larger themes of this movie is that it's about failure. I don't really know what side I fall on. I think what it is, a lot of the themes of this movie are personal failures. And so does this fall into the realm of her personal failure of I gave up on him? I could sort of maybe buy that argument a little bit. It's just, unfortunately, we've wasted a lot of time in space Vegas. And so to me, that it didn't have a ton of weight when she said that. I mean, maybe a little bit. It's not like it's a throwaway scene, but unfortunately, I don't think that it was quite earned at that point, because the other thing is I don't really get the impression that General Leia is a broken person the same way that Luke Skywalker is. I mean, she kind of has it together a little bit. And these are also not really things that are brought up in Force Awakens either. They know he fell to the dark side. And she even says, it's like, no, like he was
manipulated.
Yeah, stolen by Snoke.
But and then that's not really... he killed Han Solo after that. So she didn't give up onto it, but after he fucking MDK'd Han Solo, maybe then she's like, all right, well, maybe that was a straw.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. But I think, though, in the context of these are movies, I don't really feel like that was necessarily an earned moment for me. I think, Geoff, you're right. I think the logic of it actually plays out and is correct. But again, like, does she even seem like a broken person in this movie?
No, I don't think so. Really. No, and I think that's part of my problem is that, even more so than Luke, she should be the one character that says, and I think this is interesting. Is this going to change? We'll talk about this at the end because Carrie Fisher's death, we can talk about Colin Trevorrow all we want, whether he was the right guy or not, but seems to be from rumor that this is the one aspect he couldn't wrap his head around. And it seems that they may have been going down a redemptive story arc, but then she died, Carrie Fisher. And that's where a lot of the argument was going. So I don't know. I just feel like this is all messy for me. But anyways, how about we move on? Let's just talk about these next two sets of characters will go by quick. Let's talk about our auxiliary characters, General Hux, Captain Phasma, and Mr. DJ. Geoff, go first.
I got a big crush on General Hux. He's the boss. I don't know why I like him so much. He's just such a dick, and he's got that weird sneer, and he doesn't have much of an arc, but I don't know. I dig him. I think it was a good choice for that actor in that role, and glad they're running with it. He's just such a jerk off, this guy. I love him. It's great. DJ was fine. Benizio's good enough that he can spin gold out of straw, and he does that a bit here. But it's a useless character, so, they should have just cut the whole thing. Like, he has some interesting things to say that they don't fucking explore, which I already complained about, so I won't go back into that. Phasma. Here's the thing with Phasma, okay? Is she was never meant to be anything. Some of the original concept art for Kylo Ren was this chrome armor, which they didn't use for him. They're like, that'd be really neat to put on like a stormtrooper. So they did stormtrooper chrome armor. Gwendolyn Christie, we haven't had a woman stormtrooper before. Let's do that. And so they gave her a couple lines, and that's great. But she's kind of a fan favorite because of her spectacular role in Game of Thrones. Gwendolyn Christie's not a famous person. She ruled on Game of Thrones and became a lot more than what she was before. And that translated to The Force Awakens. That became more than it was. So it's like, well, we got to do something with her. Like, really, she should have just been thrown in the trash compactor on Starkiller Base, and she erupted in that explosion. But she escaped somehow, and now she's another, so they got to, like, give her some payoff. Like, not necessary. I think she's spectacular. It's a cool look. Like, that armor is neat, but it's nothing more than that. So what am I watching here? If she could come back, like, I'm pretty sure she's dead now, but
I think she's coming back.
I think JJ is going to bring her back.
I'm not opposed to that. Whatever. It's fine. It's just...
This is a running gag now, man, to me. I mean, this is now made as a gag. Well, I don't think that's fine.
Well, what's the running gag exactly?
Is that like, she was hardly used and then left for dead? Oh, she shows up again, quickly disposed of, left for dead. If she comes back again, this is a parody.
I don't think that's the case here. It's not a gag. It's just not necessary. That's what I'll say there. They could leave her out. You know what they should have done is left her out of episode 8 and brought her back in 9.
I think that would have been better. But they had to have Finn fight somebody.
Didn't matter.
Yeah, and I think this is where one of my beefs so far is the lack of planning. I mean, I know you can't write all 3 scripts simultaneously, but it seems like there's no vision moving forward from movie to movie, and I think that's part of the problem. We could talk about that in a second. I'll just quickly chime in here. As I mentioned with Phasma, she's a gag to me. Not a fan. DJ, wasted, as we mentioned before. General Hux is a clown. I do agree. I love the smirk on his face, and it's just a guy you just want to, like, punch silly, but I do love that little dynamic between him and Kylo Ren before when Snoke was there, but I'm afraid now that is gone now that Kylo is the Remperor, so he'll just be his lackey, and I'm sure we're not going to get anything more interesting with General Hux. But in this movie, he was played as a clown. Not a fan of the humor. I'm not even sure if you guys remember when he was first tortured by Snoke after his failure after the first opening sequence. Even when he was thrown to the ground by Snoke on the bridge of the ship, he made kind of like a goofy sound. He's just played for laughs. I'm really not a fan. And if that dynamic between him and Kylo Ren is no longer there, I really have no interest in the character. Let's just quickly have a chat before we get to the big topic, which is Luke Skywalker. Let's have a quick chat about the droids. This includes BB-8, R2, 3PO, as well as Chewie. I know these are very peripheral characters here, not too much going on, and they're mainly window dressing, but do you guys have any comments here?
I'm a little bit, I don't know what the right word is here. It's unfortunate that R2 and 3PO have been sidelined in the new trilogy. I get it, because we kind of need to move on, I suppose, but I think there's still good characters that you can use, so it's too bad that we don't get that. BB-8 didn't have the charm and humor that he had in The Force Awakens. They didn't really handle BB-8 that well. He had a couple of all right moments, but yeah, it was a kind of a special thing that they did with him in Force Awakens, like good design, good character design of that droid, and he had good moments, and he felt like a character, and here he didn't really feel like a character, didn't in the way that R2 does and that 3PO is, so kind of disappointing with the droids. But it's already overstuffed, so, whatever. Again, jettison some other characters. Yeah, like you said before. Have 3PO, do something. Have R2 hang out doing something. That would have been better than some of the characters that they added. And Chewie, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is it like hands dead? So now what do we do with them? Is that what is going on here? They're trying to pass the torch, but do something with them or kill him. And I don't want to say kill him off, but do something with him then, or give him an end. Either kill him or give him some other conclusion to a story and move on. But don't just have him in the background, because that's not fair to the character, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really to say about these characters I think that Rian Johnson is just like, I don't care about these characters. I mean, he was clearly interested in the Kylo Ren, Rey dynamic and with Luke. And so it's also sort of a weird difference between what George Lucas likes to do and what every other director appears to want to do with Star Wars. George Lucas loves the droids, loves the idea of having the weird aliens and robots and stuff like in these movies, and maybe JJ to a certain degree. None of these characters really have anything to do, and they feel it's very obligatory that they're even here. One thing we didn't mention, there's an evil BB-8 in this, which was, again, sort of, I couldn't really tell if it was played for laughs or not. I mean, it wasn't threatening. It's like, well, okay, they took a BB-8 droid, changed the head a bit and painted it black, and it's evil, I guess, which was a weird addition. It's unfortunate that, yeah, you have 3 classic characters effectively tossed aside. Yeah, Geoff, I agree with you that the charm that BB-8 had in Force Awakens is not here at all.
I agree with you. BB-8, it's taken to the next level. They took it to level 11 with his goofiness. I didn't like any of BB-8's scenes here, with maybe the minor exception of his first scene as he's fixing the X-Wing with Poe. The rest was terrible. Regarding Chewie, R2, and 3PO, these characters are now just window dressing. Why are they even here now? I mean, yeah, as we talked about, 3PO could have maybe gone with Finn and Rose, or better yet, maybe gone with R2 to Acto, and he helps try and convince Luke to come back to the good fight. Chewie could have done something more there too, except all he did was scream at Luke once and then just sat there and did nothing and eating porgs. And I mean, I guess that's the joke, but I mean, this is a serious chapter in this trilogy, and if you're not utilizing these characters to their full potential, this is a problem. Honestly, guys, I really miss R2 and 3PO. It's not just the dynamic between them, but the dynamic between the other characters is a staple of Star Wars, and it's completely missing in this sequel trilogy. I thought, it was very clear. If I was writing a story, I would say, okay, R2 and 3PO are kind of like the story keepers of what's happening. And I would have had that continue to go through this sequel trilogy. I would have hoped that smarter writers or truly understand what made the original trilogy work and what really George Lucas was trying to do would have gone back to some of those simple aspects of making these movies. Really disappointed that there's absolutely next to nothing for all 3 of these characters. I agree, Geoff. Chewie needs an end desperately. I wish he went out with Han in Force Awakens, but that's just me.
Yeah.
So, Luke Skywalker, guys, the big one. Who wants to fight to go over this one first?
Oh, boy.
Okay, Geoff, I'll give you the honor.
Sure. Well, this is a tough one. I mean, it was certainly... Shit. He did stuff. He wasn't sidelined. He wasn't sidelined like Chewie. He had an emotional arc there. He's turned to sort of this curmudgeonly old man because he thinks he's failed. Not only does he think he's failed, but he believes that the Jedi legacy just needs to die out totally, and him along with it. The revelation about his moment of weakness at the Jedi, his Jedi Academy with Kylo, where he almost struck him down. That was great. I thought that worked really well. And I wish he didn't impart enough on Rey, but he did seem to come back around at the end. Like he knew that he had to get back into the fight. I thought it was interesting. Here's how I interpreted it. Okay, he couldn't get back. Like he couldn't leave there. Like he's like, I can't go there to help them. I just can't do it. I can't go. I just can't do it. Can't face it. But here's what I can do. I can use the last of my powers to make sure that the last of this survives. Seem to come around to the idea that maybe the Jedi don't need to go. He says, like, what does he say? Like, you're wrong on all these counts. Like, I will not be the last Jedi or whatever, right? It's worse to that effect. So he seemed to come back around to that. So that was a good arc. And his sign off there, which I believe was a callback to one of Han Solo's lines, "See you around, kid." And that was good. It was poignant. I thought it was well handled, and I thought Mark Hamill did a great job. So behind Kylo Ren, that was probably the best character arc in the film.
So Geoff, I think they should use one of the things you said there as like the pull quote for some of the marketing. Luke Skywalker, he did stuff. I think there's like sort of the larger thing with Luke's story is, again, I keep going back to this idea, this meta idea of the whole movie, which I think is a bit of a message to fans. Like, you need to let certain things go with Star Wars. And so I think interesting that he's introduced as this broken man who, I mean, it's the whole idea of, well, it's the title, The Last Jedi, and he's like, the Jedi need to go. And this idea that he comes around to, it can start again, but it can start anew. And I think that's like a really, I don't know, I think it's a really beautiful kind of character arc. It's a strange character arc for a character that, you know, we've essentially grown up with for 40 years. I think Mark Hamill does a really great job of creating this curmudgeon-y old man who is trying to dissuade Rey from pursuing what she's sort of the extension of the audience in this way where like, no, we need to kind of keep this idea of the Jedi going. He's like, no, you need to let this go. And so for him to kind of come around in order to save her and sort of the resistance as well. I mean, there's obviously he's got a lot of the stuff's got to go to story points. I think he has like a really great end for the character as portrayed in this movie. I'm not really sure. I almost feel like you can't have this conversation until you've seen the movie like 4 or 5 times to really kind of get in depth with what he's trying to do, what this movie is trying to tell you. There's a lot of subtle things going on, I think, and there's a lot of subtext to not just the story, but I feel like, I don't know, I feel like there's like a lot of the thrust of this movie is actually trying to tell the fans there's needs to be new direction with these characters. But overall, I like the arc, and it's probably one of the, I don't know if it's the best arc in the movie, but I think it's satisfying because of the way we're introduced to Luke Skywalker. It's maybe not the way I would have wanted to have seen it, but it's a really well-developed arc in the movie, for better or for worse, how the character actually ends up at the end, I guess. I'm going to take it all back. I don't know anything how this arc goes because I really need to analyze this movie a few more times before I can really give like a proper answer, I feel like.
I hear what you guys are saying. I partially agree. Characters are not the same as they used to be. I think what my major problem here is that he has regressed to a point where not just the fact that he's unrecognizable. I mean, I don't mind that he has moments of weakness, like we talked about. He senses dark thoughts in Ben Solo, so he says he was thinking of contemplating on killing him, lit up the lightsaber, but turned it off or whatever, and then he didn't go through with it, but that was too late for Ben, and all that stuff. That's great. I like that kind of stuff, that he has that a character like that would have a moment of weakness, especially what he's been through. That is a logical progression for the character. But for him to say, I completely give up, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. It is not Luke Skywalker. They're just afraid to let Luke do anything here of any significance. And it stems from what Michael Arndt said, writing for Disney as soon as Disney bought the rights and he was the first screenwriter. He said straight up, hey guys, I can't write this character because the minute he's on the screen, everyone cares about him and not the new characters. So this is part of the problem with this trilogy, is that they had to really retcon the hero of the original trilogy. I mean, I also feel that there's a lot of inconsistency and it's not really cohesive. I mean, what was the point of that map to Luke? So he control the first person who comes there and says, get the fuck off my lawn? I mean, I'm not really sure here. And then as we talked, Geoff, the trailers gave an indication that Luke would have learned something from the first Jedi Temple. Han says he went to go look for the new Jedi Temple, get some new insight. No, he just regressed. And what really pisses me off the most is that these lessons that Yoda says, I mean, what about failure? That's the greatest teacher. Luke already learned these lessons, my good friends. I mean, this is my biggest problem here. He knew of the failure of the Jedi. He knew the failure of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, because we talked about it as the original trilogy. They gave up on Anakin. Obi-Wan says straight up to Luke, well, you have to kill Vader, and Luke says no, and then he says, well, the Emperor has already won. Luke already learned these lessons. And I still believe in the core essence of that character. He wouldn't have given up, no matter what. And he would have gone down fighting that fight, even if that meant his death. And I think that would have been the natural progression of that character. I know that that's kind of what happens in this movie, but I don't like the lead up. And then we get to the idea that she never really learned anything from Luke. There was really no training. I'm really having a problem here, guys. And then what about, if he gives up on Ben, what about his other students that went with Kylo Ren? Does he not have responsibility to these characters if they're still alive? Again, this is not Mark Hamill's fault. This is a fault in the writing, and I think just a problem with planning this trilogy here. There is no plan. It's just, I feel like in the end, this trilogy is going to be known for JJ battling with Rian Johnson's vision. Which one is correct here? And it's a problem for me here.
Yeah, well, those Jedi don't have big actors or actress cast as them, so obviously you can't care about them. That's why.
Yeah.
I 100% agree with you, Harry, that this is like a battle between JJ and Rian Johnson. I honestly feel like I'd sort of forgotten about those plot issues he brought up, like the inconsistencies. And it's truly, I 100% agree with you. That was JJ he just kind of came up with these ideas thinking that someone was going to run with them. Rian Johnson just kind of shit on all over it.
Yeah.
And my fear, which I don't know if we want to even talk about it now, is JJ going to reverse any of it?
He may. I think maybe you guys hit the nail on the head. We can talk about predictions. I really don't think Luke's going to show up in episode 9. I think he's done. Like with that poignant scene at the end, to bring him back as a smiling Force ghost at the end of episode 9 is pointless, in my opinion. And if he's just going to sit there and just give Rey some other advice, I don't think that's really interesting enough for me to see Luke do that. Just one last question to you guys. What was Luke's third lesson, if there was one? Nathan, want to take a stab at it?
Okay, oh man, really put me on the spot. Lifting rocks is the most important thing you can do as a Jedi. Because we've seen multiple Jedi. Okay, so she lifted those rocks, saved the Resistance. It's a major part of his training. Yoda saved Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. He held up those rocks. I'm really grasping at straws here. I don't know. Again, that was like a weird thing that until we started talking about it, I completely forgot that was an aspect of the movie. That is like, yeah, 3 lessons and then she kind of takes off before the third one. And there's no, I wonder if that's like a deleted scene and then it turned into like a weird joke moment that they just like, we don't need that. I don't know.
Geoff?
I think it was deliberately left floating out there.
No, you're not allowed to say that.
I'm not allowed to say that.
You have to come up with a third
lesson. Yeah. Well, let's see. I mean, I was assuming he was going to teach her how to do some sweet backflips. He was good at that, so that might have been in there. Well, she did go into the dark side cave. Maybe that was the third lesson.
Well, that's not his lesson.
No, but he might have meant it to be. That's all I have there. That or backflips. Sweet backflips.
Yeah, I guess that, I mean, really the lesson is left unsaid, but, it's odd that she never witnessed what Luke did. I guess she just felt him passing because she was too busy, so I think that was also a missed opportunity, but I guess maybe that final lesson will be maybe never give up and always fight the good fighter, or whatever, or maybe it'll be part of episode 9. Just wanted to drop in one other comment, as I kind of wish that Noah from the Ewoks Battle for Endor came, visited on the planet, and just gave Luke an ass whooping that he deserved. Look what I can do. What I went
This was a stick battle. I'll show you a stick battle.
Yeah, I'll show you a stick battle. I think that would have been sweet. But one last thing I forgot to mention is, I needed something more from Luke. I needed something else. It was not enough for me. Let's have an open forum. Nathan, please start us off. What interested you?
So I think the idea of failure, I mean, it's a little bit on the nose at times about learning from failure and from the cyclical nature of conflict in this galaxy that they've sort of created. I also think that, and I keep coming back to it again, like this meta message of letting the past go, specifically with letting not Star Wars canon, but just the idea of what to expect from these Star Wars movies are like, you need to let that go. Actually, in a way, like, I mean, we didn't talk too much about DJ, but he actually kind of spelled it out as like, you blow them up, they blow you up, and then it starts all over again. And that, I think, in a way, that's like the simplest way to explain the idea that this movie is trying to, or one of the ideas that this movie is trying to portray, that this idea of things going on over and over. And in many ways, that's sort of the failure of not letting a lot of these things go and creating something new. Once you hold on to that idea, you'll always be in this conflict. Maybe I'm giving the movie a little bit too much credit there and I'm reading into it a little, but that was sort of my takeaway, that until you can let that things go, you cannot truly progress, I guess.
Geoff?
Pain heals, chicks dig scars, glory lasts forever. That was what I got. The message I got, again, I said it before, from Rose. We're not going to win by destroying the things we hate. We're going to win by protecting the things we're saving the things we love. That was good. I wish there was a little more of that. That also bled into, we got to do more than just blow shit up. That is what sort of letting the past die. I mean, Star Wars has always kind of been about blowing shit up. And there's more in Star Wars than that, but I mean, there's always stuff blowing up. So I thought those were good messages, and I wish they had explored those more. I don't think we're going to get an exploration of that going forward. Those are the best things that I pulled out.
Well, from my end, I agree with you. I mean, learning about the failures, let the past die. I mean, these kind of things. I also got the heavy-handed message that anyone can be a Jedi. I mean, I like that. And that's, with Rey understanding where she comes from now. I think that's awesome that she's random, but really isn't that interesting to me because, I mean, it's interesting that it's fine that she's comes from nobody, and that's great. But all the other Jedi previously came from pretty much nobody's anyways. So it's not something that I really look at and attach to. Class division or animal rights stuff, I mean, that's just so underexplored. That's not worth talking about it again. I think that's just a big mistake to throw in there. The one that really grated me, because it was so ham-fisted, is the spark to provide a new hope. And what Leia was saying at the end, we fought to the end, but the spark is gone. And now we have Luke. But what about the Resistance fighters? Aren't they kind of inspired by Holdo's sacrifice or all their other fallen comrades from the battles before and the events that just literally happened on Starkiller Base? They won that good fight. They need further inspiration. And this was so heavy-handed, and it was mentioned over and over and over and over again. I believe even the word spark is mentioned in the opening crawl. It is terrible. And I'm tired of it, and I thought it was terrible.
You're right with them saying the spark to light. I was losing my mind. Every time it was mentioned, it's like, okay, we already heard it. Because it's also in one of the trailers.
Yeah.
I think it's in the second trailer. So when they kept saying it over, I was like, wait, are they just going to keep saying it? It was such a weird decision to do it. I feel like it's not that inspiring, but it's also a very awkward thing to just say, like the spark to light. Like you say it once, okay, you got it over with. But when everyone started saying it, then it was, I don't want to say it was comedic, but it really grated on my nerves.
There's a funny thing. There was an old rumor, but I thought this would have been way more interesting. That line reminded me of a rumor that the Resistance and Leia, part of the story here was that they had found or got access to also a mass destruction weapon, and part of this story was them going to be a conflict, a military interpolitical conflict of whether they should use it against the First Order or not. And I thought that would have been very, very interesting. But we did not get any of that. So when I heard, because that was a very early rumor, so when I saw that line in the second trailer that Post says, we have the spark that will burn the First Order to the ground and stuff like that, I thought, oh, sweet, maybe this is true and they're going to explore it. No, I just need inspiration from the latest guy who's going to come in and help us. What have you done for me lately? And it was such a letdown. But that's just me. Okay, let's quickly talk about the score, guys. Thoughts? Let's just quickly do a round table. Did it improve? I just want to say the one thing. When I listened to the podcast, The Force Awakens, we were all very critical of that score. In retrospect, I think we were a bit too harsh because John Williams did provide a lot of new themes. Some of the tracks do work well. So saying that, what do you think of this movie?
I think you're right. I think we were too harsh on The Force Awakens. I didn't find a lot new here. What was neat was he used some original trilogy track and some prequel tracks as well. So it's neat to see those integrated. But other than that, I mean, it was fine. It certainly didn't blow my ears off. In the second trailer, the music that plays under the second trailer is so good.
I know.
And I don't know where that is. Like, where is that from?
John Williams doesn't score the trailers. They hire another team to do that.
No, they use his tracks.
No, they use his tracks, but that was arranged differently. Using Rey's theme. And I was hoping was going to be Luke's theme with the Jedi steps when Rey goes up and meets Luke at the end of Force Awakens.
I thought that track.
That's a great track. And, there was a lot of rumor again going around that was now going to be Luke's theme moving forward. Because, the main Star Wars fanfare was originally Luke's theme in a sense, and you got to move beyond that. So that was kind of Luke's theme. And that appeared next to nowhere in this movie. Again, another disappointing aspect here.
Yeah, it was fine, I guess, is all I can say. I mean, John Williams is getting up there, so it's still kind of remarkable what he's able to do. But he's almost doing it by rote now. Creativity's not quite there. So it was fine.
Yeah, I didn't really notice the theme or the score that much, to be honest. And, I own the score now for Force Awakens, and it's like, I kind of enjoy it, actually. With this, I just didn't notice it, and maybe that's just because of one viewing, but I wasn't really blown away by any particular moment. Like there was no point at any time during the score that really grabbed me like it does in some of the other movies. I mean, again, I sort of know when those beats are coming up in my favorite Star Wars movies, like say, the asteroid field or something like that. Like I know when it's going to happen, and it's just, I love this. So I think maybe with time, I think my opinion is going to change. So I'm not going to really cast too much of a judgment on it now. I'm just going to say that right now, I heard a few familiar beats, and that's all I remember.
Yeah, for me, it was more of a greatest hits album, but there wasn't a lot of new great action tracks. That's a shame. But as we talked about John Williams getting up there in age, the only new theme that I did notice was Rose's theme, which was okay, but doesn't blow me away. So a bit disappointing. So let's talk about Rian Johnson, guys. So let's wrap this sucker up very quickly here. What do we think? What did he bring to the table? Are we satisfied with his writing and his direction? Let's leave the final thoughts just for right after this. Nathan, please start us off.
Oh boy. I mean, there's a lot to unpack with this director. I'm not overly familiar with his work. I think the only movie I'm actually know of his is Looper, which I really like, despite I have some problems with it. I think what he's done here is at the very least very noble to try and take it in this new direction. I'm interested to see what he does with this mysterious new trilogy that Lucasfilm and Disney is just sort of handed him, I guess, with apparently no pitch. I mean, it must be just based on a simple idea, and they're like, yeah, just go for it. But, I think that part of my problems with his direction of this and the writing of it is that there were elements of the story that he didn't really care about, and because he was just handed a mystery box by JJ, and he has said that, yeah, I just had basically carte blanche to do what I want. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go in this direction. So I think right now it's a little hard to judge. I know there's probably some controversy about what this movie is, but I think that it's going to take time to actually judge it for where it is and where it stands in Star Wars. But I think at the very least, he should be applauded for trying new things, where that was a huge criticism with JJ. It's like he was just rehashing the old, and don't even get me started on the prequels. At the very least, you can say it's a noble attempt at something different.
Geoff?
I think I have to agree with that. I mean, yeah, that was the biggest criticism of The Force Awakens, is that it was a rehash of what came before, and he certainly tried to take it in a new direction. I often commend writers and filmmakers and actors for falling flat on their face if at least they took a chance with it as opposed to playing it safe. So good, I guess. But unfortunately, a lot of his risks didn't pay off. If at least there had been a balance, like if half had paid off and half hadn't, that would have been fine. But I think more fell flat than didn't. The writing, it's kind of a tale of two cities here, because I think the dialogue was very well written, but the story itself is kind of a mess for a lot of the movie, and a lot of pointless things happening here. So yeah, I gotta criticize that. He didn't write a tight movie here. I mean, The Force Awakens, which had its story problems for sure, but it was tight, and this wasn't. It was a little bit sloppy, and there was lots of stuff going on that was totally useless. He didn't. It's not like anybody needs to bow down at the altar of J.J. Abrams or anything like that, but I don't think he paid enough respect to what J.J. started with, just from a continuity perspective. I'm fine with tossing out, basically tossed out Kylo Ren's mask. I thought that was good because it was a character development. It was... I didn't like when Luke tossed his lightsaber over his shoulder. I mean, I think that worked fine for some people, but I didn't like that because I think that undercut that moment when she arrives and hands it to him at the end of Force Awakens. I thought was one of the best moments of that movie. And then he basically just took a dump on that scene. I didn't think that was appropriate to do. I don't think that's what Luke's reaction would have been. But again, as Nathan said, this is the sign, we're throwing the past away. So I get what he was trying to do. I just didn't like how he did it in some scenes. The best part of the movie also is perhaps the most problematic, and that is, I get the impression Rian Johnson's like, who's this Snoke guy? Fuck this guy. He's dead. And they killed him. And he did it in such spectacular fashion, in such a great scene, that it covers up the problem here, which is, who is this Snoke guy? How did he get his tentacles into Ben Solo's mind to turn to the dark side without ever presumably meeting him, I think? And what all happened there? And I don't think we're going to get those answers now because he's dead. So that's a problem, man. And yeah, he took some risks, but I don't know. I mean, the movie looked great. Like, he shot the shit out of it, so I give him that. And he got good performances from every single one of his actors. So a lot of the elements of a director, that you want from a writer director are there. Just to go back to Looper, I'm not a fan of Looper. Many story problems and logic problems there that people don't seem to pick out for some reason. And it's great. Like, it doesn't make a goddamn bit of sense. So, and neither did this movie. There you go. That's Rian Johnson for you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, mixed bag. I'm glad he took some bold choices here. I agree with you guys completely. Some worked, some did not, and I lean towards the more did not. The only one I did like was the stuff that happened with Kylo Ren and Snoke, but as you mentioned, Geoff, then who the fuck is Snoke? That undercuts what has happened before, and I think that in between the movies there is no or little consistency. With respect to this movie itself, it is also incohesive and it's not tight. I mean, it's structured poorly from a narrative perspective, a story perspective, and a lot of it did not work for me. Lucky enough that the Kylo Rey and Rey Luke scenes work, but even then, there is some flaws with the story, mainly dealing with who is Luke Skywalker, which was essentially, I guess, the first question ever asked by anybody at Lucasfilm when they got the rights from George Lucas. And considering this is what we got, I'm not sure I like it. But, the direction was good. He did a good job. He got the performances. He wrote some good dialogue. But the humor, we really haven't touched a lot on the humor. This movie was jam-packed with way too much humor. And that is worrisome. And I'm surprised that Rian Johnson went that way. It did not work. Overall, a very big mixed bag with Rian Johnson and his writing and direction. Some good, some bad. Gentlemen, let's get into our final thoughts. Who wants to go first? Do we recommend this movie? Is it a rare antiquity? Geoff, I'll give you the honor of going last. Nathan, you start us.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a lot of quick couple of final thoughts. I did walk out of this movie unsatisfied, but feeling that I needed to see it again. And I will be curious to see how the opinion of it changes over the years, because
right now
apparently
it's getting amazing reviews. Most people love it.
Yeah, so it has, I believe, the highest number, like it has the best Rotten Tomatoes score. It's getting some of the best reviews from critics. There's actually, the cinema score is still an A, which is like an actual professional company that does basically an exit.
I heard that, but the prequels all got very high cinema scores as well. So say that.
That's true. But but I'm thinking more in terms of like when Empire Strikes Back came out. I believe that was also
that was panned by critics. That was panned by critics.
It was panned by critics, but I think the common viewer was also very mixed on it. So I want to very curious to see what time will do to this movie. Rare antiquity, I'm going to say a provisional yes, because it's a hard thing to do, to take big risks with one of the, if not the biggest franchise in movies of all time. And so I think it should be commended for that. And I think it's a special kind of director that can, have the balls to kind of do that with Star Wars. A recommendation, sure. And it's not awful or anything like that. I think that's kind of where I fall on it. Harry, you said it best, mixed bag.
Geoff?
Yeah, fuck. This is a tough one. I really enjoyed the third act of this movie. And that really brought it over the finish line for me. If it hadn't closed out so strongly with such good scenes, I don't know where this would have landed for me. There were some major problems with this film. So, would I recommend it? It's still Star Wars, and there's some really good stuff going on here. Like, there's some really good stuff in this movie that definitely got to recommend. As far as rare antiquity, I don't know that I want to be painted in on this. It needs some time. I got to see it a few more times, and I'm going to need some perspective on it to say, falling into Nathan's camp there, like, you got to commend the guy for taking some chances with such a huge franchise and a known property. I mean, the tendency from a studio's perspective is like, we just got to play this right down the middle here, make our billions, make the fans happy, and let's go home. And that didn't seem like, I got to give credit to the studio as well. That wasn't their concern, was just like, play it down the middle, make the fans happy. It was like, Ryan, make a good movie for us here in Star Wars, please. Here's your sandbox. Here's your Luke Skywalker action figure. Like, go get him. And if we hate it, we'll just have you assassinated after, and nobody will ever find your body. You got to give them credit there. It's just a fucking shame that so much of it fell flat. So, rare antiquity, I don't want to echo Nathan just because I don't want to copy, but I'll give it a provisional, yeah.
Okay, so I forgot to ask. So, Geoff, I'll let you do it first. What about your ranking? Where does it fall? Oh, just on first impulse.
Yeah, on first, it ranks behind the original trilogy. It ranks behind The Force Awakens and ahead of the prequels and ahead of Rogue One.
Nathan, how about your rankings?
That's exactly where I would put it as well.
All right. Well, Geoff, I was going to give you the final thoughts, but I guess it didn't work out that way. Sorry about that. My apologies. I had good intentions there.
Yeah, but you fell to the dark side like I suspected you would.
Yeah. I 100% agree with your statement that we should be commending Rian Johnson to take chances. This movie was very bold, but I'm not sure, in the good words of Captain Sisko, if fortune favored the bold, because a lot of it didn't work for me. The one chance that did work, which was the one twist that took away Snoke, I can buy that because it fits within the logical story progression that now Kylo will fulfill what his grandfather did not, and that now he's in charge. He took out his dark side master. Vader did not accomplish that. That fits in the Star Wars saga when we're looking at it from episodes 1 to 9, which is what I am looking for in these movies. So that is a chance. The interactions between Rey and Kylo is working for me, and some of that is a bit of a chance. But a lot of this was from a filmmaking perspective, a conceptual nightmare. It was not tight. The stories did not make sense, despite the good performances. And I'll be honest, guys, for a film that is the return of the original trilogy and maybe essentially saga hero Luke Skywalker, that is one of the most disappointing experiences I've ever had going to a movie. I know it's not a story anymore and we have to service Rey, but I needed more here, guys. He didn't do anything, didn't have any really new sense of wisdom. He was completely wrong. So they really retconned who this character was, and it didn't really jive with what JJ presented, the map to the island, as we talked about, the idea that maybe he would gain some new insight and then train Rey, or at least give Rey some good advice or natural wisdom of what he has learned. I liked his final scene of him passing away in front of the suns. That was beautiful, but I don't like, Geoff, unlike you, I do not like anything in the third act. That was very anticlimactic for me. I needed more from the return of one is essentially one of the best movie characters of all time. I'm let down. And I know it's not a story, but I can't take that feeling away. I'm trying to, but if the rest of the movie was strong, I can let that go. But as of now, I don't recommend this movie. It's not a rare antiquity. So yeah, the original trilogy in its entirety, Phantom Menace, Force Awakens, Rogue One, and then way down below we have The Last Jedi, unfortunately, siding with Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones. I like some chances. We just need to make sure these are the right chances. And I don't know. That's just all I have to say.
Did you like it more or less than the Ewok movies?
Oh, you want my honest opinion? I like the Ewok movies more than this guy.
Really? Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah. This is a movie, I agree with you guys, that it's going to take a lot of time to parse through this and let it sit with you. This is my first natural instinct here, whether it's going to improve or not. I mean, there are aspects of The Force Awakens I like a little bit more than we originally did the podcast, and some stuff I actually like less, and it kind of sits where it is. I don't know what'll happen with this one. I'm like with you guys, time's going to tell, and I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens with episode 9, because right now I feel this trilogy is kind of, as we talked, it doesn't fit well together so far. I don't know, do you have 5-10 minutes to just talk about any predictions for episode 9? Any words?
Sure.
We can just throw it around. What do you predict? Is Luke returning? What about the Knights of Ren? Is there any potential for Snoke to return? Is there just going to be a simple Kylo Ren's going to die and that's It's going to be a simple battle, or is there going to be more to it?
Well, Admiral Thrawn is going to take over the First Order, and Rey is going to team up with Mara Jade. I don't know. I'm just making shit up. I'm actually a little bit concerned because JJ is maybe not the best finisher. That's sort of his signature move, is to create the mystery and move on. That's what Lost sort of was. I'm kind of hoping that we see a really badass lightsaber battle in episode 9. If Luke comes back, I could sort of take it or leave it. I think he might actually. I think he might have a small appearance. And what I hope is that we actually get more sort of team dynamics between our three leads of Finn, Poe, and Rey. And then, if we can get fewer new big characters that don't really serve any function. I'm not really sure. I would like to see like a reappearance of an old character. I'm trying to think of one that would be appropriate, though.
Kitster.
Yeah.
The brown guy must return. We need another brown guy in there, guys.
I think that'd be great. No, but joking aside, like I think that I'm trying to think of what about Lando? I mean, would Lando come back? Maybe.
No,
I don't know.
Too late.
Well, Billy D is a little too old too, I think, to do like an effective part.
He's a little round these days too.
I think if you were going to bring Lando in anywhere, Leia would have, or Poe, or somebody, he would have replaced the Maz Kanata cameo here.
Yeah.
That would have fit perfectly here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think all bets are off. I'm actually a little bit happy that Trevorrow was removed. I'm not, terribly happy with JJ coming back, but I think Trevorrow, I'm not a Jurassic World fan. Safety Not Guaranteed is fine. And I've heard like some of the friction as well came from the fact that he has a bit of a problem with women. Not like in his personal life or anything like that, but I rewatched Safety Not Guaranteed, and considering what's her name? Bryce Dallas Howard had running heels the whole time for Jurassic World. It's crazy.
I think people pick apart little things like that for nothing.
Well, I agree and I disagree. I think that, that's a whole other issue or whatever. But I mean, these are some of the things that I've read and heard that was numerous problems. There was numerous story problems. And then he had Book of Henry come out, and apparently, that probably, sealed the deal with Kathleen Kennedy. She's like, no, we're not having this. So
sorry to interrupt, Nathan. I had heard that from what I'm reading is that the death of Carrie Fisher, he had a specific story in mind, and that's why I was thinking that they may have tried to attempt to go down another redemption arc or something. Maybe I'm wrong on that because they didn't say redemption. It's just that the death of Carrie Fisher left him scrambling, and she had such a bigger role in episode 9 that he had to go back to the writing board, and he just couldn't figure out a way to make it work. And then he had some run-ins with Kathleen Kennedy, and those arguments led him to be fired.
Fair enough. We'll probably never really know. But,
no, you don't know the real truth, but that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. So I'm a little hesitant about what's going to happen with 9 at this point.
Geoff, any predictions? Here's your chance to stake your claim.
First off, I'm fine with Colin Trevorrow getting the escape pod to Tatooine here. Whatever the reason was, Jurassic World stunk. So I don't want his taint anywhere near my Star Wars. So fuck him. Okay, say what you want. If you're a JJ fan or not a JJ fan, that's all fine. But the good news is that he did create these characters, so he has some love for them. I think that we'll see their arcs paid off in the right way, in a satisfying way, because he's going to want to bring them across the finish line. He's not going to want to jettison anything like the way Rian Johnson wanted to jettison things. I don't think he's going to try to reverse any of the decisions. Snoke's gone. I don't think we're seeing any Force Ghost or resurrection of that. I think it's very likely we will see Luke Skywalker as a Force Ghost, however briefly. I think it's quite likely that we'll see that. I'm curious to see what the story is going to be, because I don't think that Kylo is turning back to the light side. And if he is, that's going to be quite the trick to pull off there. But that does mean then that will be the end of the Skywalkers. So they're going to need to address doing that. That's fine. If that's what they're going to do, then that's what they're going to do. But I don't think that should just be thrown away. That's going to have to be important. And as far as anything else, I don't know that I can think of what else you can predict for it. I hope it's not just a standard, we got to go blow shit up type of storyline. I was hoping, we didn't get it here, but I was hoping we were going to delve into it a little bit more. This shouldn't just be the Resistance fighting the First Order. There should be some kind of existential issue here with the Force and the Jedi and the good and the evil. it should go so much deeper than where it's gone before. Like, my original theory was that the First Order was like an apocalyptic cult, and Starkiller Base was like a weapon that was going to destroy the galaxy because they're an apocalyptic cult. And that was probably a little too dark for Star Wars. It obviously didn't go that way. But if you can kind of extrapolate what I'm talking about there, I would like it to be more than just we're fighting the bad guys because they wear black and have masks. So, like, it falls a little flat. Like, what's beneath all of that? So it'd be nice if JJ can take us somewhere like that. I think probably won't, but I'm a fan of his. He's not a perfect filmmaker or writer or anything like that, but I'm always entertained. So I'm cautiously optimistic.
I mean, yeah, Geoff, I kind of disagree. I mean, agree and disagree. I don't think this is the third act of a trilogy. They're not going to be really throwing anything new. Your new stuff happened in this film, and they're going to stay with it. You mentioned that they may or may not be throwing away the Skywalker line, and if so, there should be some further explanation. I don't think you're going to get any other explanation. My prediction here is that there is going to be a time jump between this movie and Episode 9, maybe something like 10 years. This will help deal with the unfortunate reality that Carrie Fisher is gone, and her death will be explained in the opening crawl, so you won't have to deal with her anymore. And that will also give time for both fleets to rebuild a little bit, because at the end of this movie, you're left with Resistance scraps, and unfortunately, you're not given any indication of the First Order's supplies and fleet, but I think this will allow them to even the odds. And I'm going to predict that Rey off-screen is going to be training some new Jedi. They'll be there, and those Jedi will help defeat Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren, while Finn and Poe and others destroy the fleet and Hux, and maybe Phasma returns for one, third round for Finn. I'll predict she comes back too. I think Snoke does not return, but I can see JJ, if that's the one thing he will retcon from this movie, is that Snoke will return. Regarding Luke Skywalker, he is done. I don't want to see him come back. I think they did enough damage here for Luke, and even then, he's not going to provide anything worth of interest moving forward except smile at the end. And Rey doesn't need Luke. If he wasn't able to instill any advice to her while he was alive, I really don't think there's any need to in his death. Let the man rest in peace. That's my predictions. Does anyone else want to say anything, or have we covered it all?
Whew, I'm exhausted. So yeah, I think we're there.
All right. Nathan?
Although I think we probably could talk for another couple hours. I think we should just call it right there. I think it's just like we need to give this movie a little bit more time to sort of gestate in our brains.
It was a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you very much. This is episode 8, The Last Jedi. Geoff, what do you have in store for us next?
Well, we are going all the way to the foreign wastelands of Canada.
Oh my goodness.
For the Canadian film Bon Cop, Bad Cop.
Oh, okay. I've seen that one, but that's okay. I'll watch it again.
Well, I mean, most movies we do the show we've seen before.
But that's okay. That's good.
All right.
I'm looking forward to it. All right. Thank you very much. I know this was a long one. I was hoping this format would have shortened the discussion, but it did not.
Not even close.
Not even close. Well, we're under 5 hours, so I think that still is an improvement over The Force Awakens. So,
yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks for this one.
Away! Young Skywalker. I'm ending all of this. The tree, the text, the Jedi. I'm gonna burn it down.
Skywalker, Mr. Jedi. Heeded my words not, did you? Pass on what you have learned.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, the thing about that is... Ha 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 ha!